All right, hi everyone. Welcome to Mindgasms. Doing another book club chat today with Tristram, of course, A.K.A. Tris, and Dusty, A.K.A. Woke Centrist. And we're gonna nerd out on another fantasy book today. Before They're Hanged, the second book in the original First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie, A.K.A. Lord Grimdark, who writes the best grimdark character-driven fantasy, or at least some of the best. And so in this one, Logen Ninefingers A.K.A. the Bloody Nine, and Bayaz, the first of the Magi, they basically lead Ferro, this ruthless killer like Logen Ninefingers, and Jezal, who, very important to his character, gets maimed and almost dies in this book on an epic quest for an ancient forbidden magic. And then also Glokta is put in charge of defending the city Dagoska, I think it is.
Yeah.
And he's just being all like awesome and Glokta-y and stuff. So, and then of course Logen and Ferro have some really awkward sex, and it's hilarious.
Oh, but you know what? That's another thing I love about Lord Grimdark is he's just like, it's gonna be straight up in every area. I'm not just gonna go for like try to do it with the killing. He's just like, I'm just gonna say it how it is, and it's like, just because you are like a freaking awesome fighter does not mean that everything's just gonna flow the way you want it to.
It's like, sorry, it's been a while.
and like, she's not exactly normal either, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
She's not some like courtesan who's been like, practicing her moves. She's like Ferro. She's like rebel killer.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm wondering about her because I know she can't feel pain.
Yeah.
So I wonder if that's also the same for pleasure.
Yeah, like her senses must be different with her being devilkin.
Mm-hmm.
So, interesting thing to think about.
Like again,
harsh.
In this one, like I always notice when rereading a great book like this, I notice like more of the details that I didn't notice before, and especially since in this reread, I already know that there's actually more of a plot going on than there appears to be, and so I'm noticing more world building than I did before, and like kind of more of the pieces that set up some of the events that happen in the third book, kind of like Brandon Sanderson that way a little bit.
Well,
and
I think almost any great author, right, who do series, they need that, and Joe Abercrombie definitely deserves the title of great author, right? His plotting is excellent, and one of the things he does is he doesn't just trope it, right? That's one of the things we love about him, is that he defies the tropes, and so it's harder to figure out where he's going than it often is.
But I will point out one trope though that is pretty major.
Tropes. He just plays.
Yeah, but the trope I think it's a good trope. Personally, I like it. But the trope of this book is that it's the second in the trilogy, and all of the main characters fail at their quests.
All right,
that's true, isn't it?
Yeah, but again, and no, I see what you're saying there. Absolutely, yeah, it's not something I'd really thought of. And again, also in a way that reminds me of like some of the best series I know, is when book 2 is excellent, you know you're in for a good trilogy. Like a lot of people can do a good ending, and a lot of people can do authors really work hard on good starts. But those middle sections often can feel like meandering, and that is not this book. Anyone who haven't read it, who are watching this, Before They're Hanged is a fantastic book. And it's definitely part of the series, but it is in and of itself an excellent piece of writing.
And one of the things I love about Joe Abercrombie too is that I normally am a very plot-driven reader. So if it usually with something character-driven, I just start thinking, okay, but nothing is happening. Make something happen, please. But throughout these books, the characters are so great that even though not really that much happens overall, I still I never feel bored reading the books because the characters and their interactions are so interesting, and what is happening to them. It reminds me of Stephen King a little bit in that way too, because he writes mostly really character driven novels, and they're really great for that reason too. Even though a lot of his novels are they're really slow moving in some parts, and there's this huge gradual build up in a lot of them too.
He has a couple of thrillery ones, but
yeah,
almost all of it is that slow grind. I remember reading, I think it was Misery, and I just wanted to throw the book out the window. I'm like, why am I wasting my time with this? And someone's like, no, but it's creepy. I'm like, I don't. And anyway, I don't read most of King, I've got to admit. But the thing is, you're right. That slow. I'm like, just something happened. You could have written this in half the page. Anyway, I'll stop complaining about King. But like you say, I've never felt that way with Abercrombie. But that's just his style. Just suits me, I guess, a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting what Dusty said. I hadn't necessarily noticed that, Dusty, but it's absolutely right. The 3 big splits. So where did you want to start the discussion generally, Andrew? Are you going to split it into the 3 parts, or do you want to talk it beginning, middle, end? How do you approach it?
We can do it beginning, middle, and end if you want to, and just talk about some of your favorite parts and favorite stuff that happens with some of the different characters.
I think the
you
3
guys,
are.
if I bet you guys probably can help fill me in a little bit on a little bit more detail about the world building stuff, some of it that I noticed a little bit more this time. Yeah, that's fun to talk about too.
Well, there's 3 big arcs, isn't there? There's the often an adventure to the old world to find the seed with Bayaz and Logen and etc. There's the war in the north with West and Dogman and all that stuff, and then there's the siege with Bayaz and co. So where do you want to start?
Well, what do you think, Dusty? What do you want to start with?
Do you want to start with the war first?
Okay. Yeah, that's actually kind of what I was thinking. Sure.
The war in the north?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So just the key backdrop to this that I actually love, because I see it a lot in historical fiction, some of which I've read, things like the Sharp books, etc., is the Union are clearly the good guys. I mean, they're off to fight Bethod, who is definitely, in my head at the beginning of this book, the bad guy. I'm pretty sure Bethod's the bad guy. We had a little bit of him in book 1. His sons are really... I mean, the word prick just came to mind. I'm trying to think of something better, more witty to say. He's just a prick. And we know that he's managed to gather all the North. And the people that we like in the North, which is Logan's band, right? Which are now being led by 3 Trees, they are all against Bethod. So it's the few Northmen we actually like are against him anyway. So I thought what's going to happen is they're going to rebel. They're going to join the Union, and they're going to train the Union, and the Union are going to win. That's not what happens. But it looks like that is what's going to happen. And that's why Abercrombie really got me with this storyline, even though a lot of it is really gut-wrenchingly sad. Because I really like Colin West. I think he might be he's right up there for possibly my favorite character of the series, as someone I actually like. I mean, Glokta's a better character. He's more amazing, but I don't like him. I don't like Glokta. But I like West. Even when West makes bad decisions, like when he hits his sister, for example, I still actually, and I know this makes me maybe a weird person, but I genuinely sympathize with West. I think I get him. He doesn't always make good decisions, but I don't need my characters to always make good decisions. And so, but this story of the war in the North really defied my expectations. Even though I thought I knew what I was getting into with Abercrombie, I'm like, I know where he's going to go with this. He tricked me, which is brilliant. I loved it. and the dogmen and the crew, Logan's old crew, are just some of the best characters that are secondary. You know, that he doesn't spend loads of time with them, but you really feel like you know them and you care about them and you think they're all awesome, whether it be Thunderhead or Grim or Three Trees or Dogman. They're all just great. And you're just like, wow, like, how did you do that with so little screen time? Anyway,
One of the things I want to say about Wes is I like how they highlighted how his anger is such a weakness.
Yeah.
And how that affects him, because we do see that Black Dow gives him the nickname Furious, and
Black Dow.
well, mainly because of what he did when they were fighting. He basically ripped the man's face off with his mouth, and kind of went into like a little bit of a little Bloody Nine mode for a moment there, where he kind of went nuts and didn't really know exactly what he did.
Yeah, went into a fighting rage. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then ultimately his anger does cost him like a potential love interest when he walks in on the dog man getting it on with Cathal. But
is that at the end of this book?
It's near the end. We're talking about like, and also his anger.
I thought it was in book 3.
No, it's definitely this book.
Right. Yeah, okay. Cool.
So, and then the anger that caused him to kill Prince Ladislaw because he caught him raping
Trying
Cathal.
to rape,
attempting to rape Cathal. So
but the thing that's interesting is that, isn't it? That we sympathize with him, but he has a fatal flaw.
For sure.
Yeah, the flaw, I don't know if you could say works. It does work in his favor at times, but it's also like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
because I wasn't. When Ladislaw was killed, I wasn't like, I don't like you anymore. I was like kind of clapping, like the dude was a douche and a half.
But it causes repercussions. And
look what happened. Like in that instance, his sole purpose is to protect this man. He puts his life on the line. He gets in an extremely bloody battle doing so, where he doesn't know if he was going to survive or not.
Yep.
And he comes back and he's just disrespecting everybody. It's not only disrespecting Cathal, it's disrespecting the entire crew, because he's supposed to, they're all going out for his sake, and he's screwing around.
And they do everything.
It made me so mad.
And especially because they do everything to make him into a better person. And I thought that was going to be the arc. Yeah, a little bit like they did with Jezal. Like, I thought they were going to take him from being like this foppish idiot, that he was going to have all these things go wrong, which of course do go wrong. And I was expecting them to go wrong. And then, of course, like but there's a competent leader there, Burr, and West's there, and he's competent, and the dogman's competent. I'm like, oh, it's going to work out. And then he's like, put him in the back where he can't do any damage. But then, of course, Bethod's tricked them, and he's coming from the back. And so, like, and then West gives him so many chances to get it right. He's like, definitely don't rush in. He's like, we're rushing in. He's like, definitely don't do that. He's like, I'm definitely doing that. And then even after they all get wasted, and it looks like the prince is kind of almost realizing, oh my goodness, I got 10,000 men killed. Like, that's different from saying I got a person killed, which we sometimes see in books, don't we? Like someone struggling because something that their actions may have led to someone's death. He's led to thousands of deaths and potentially the loss of the Union. And he's the heir apparent. He's been sent here to get a success so that the people will like him more. Well, that backfired. And so West holds him in utter contempt. He's got all of West's people killed. And for honor, West stands by him anyway and does his duty. And then they're in that last bit where they're like, right, they're going to attack us. We've got to go fight them. Come with us. come and fight with us. We're going to fight to save you. Come and be one of the fighters. And he refuses. And he stays back with Gale. And then, while they're out there, desperately trying to save his life, he's just like, my goodness, I really want to bang somebody. And like, no wonder. I mean, rape is an awful thing in and of itself. It is categorically just evil. But the fact that then he hasn't just not gone out to fight when everyone else has done everything and bled for him. He isn't just not going to risk himself. While other people are doing that, he's not sitting back going, my goodness, I hope they come back alive. You know, we should keep a lookout. Should we pray for them or whatever? He's just going, I have not had sex in a long time. And there's no one. And I probably won't be able to get away with this when they're back. So while they're all out there, I'm just going to really try and bang this woman. No wonder. But one of the things that's interesting is when West does it, Dusty, the juxtaposition in how cold he is. He's not in the battle rage when he does it, is he?
Yeah.
Like, it's the exact opposite. He's just like, it's very, is the word logical? I don't know.
It's very calm.
Yeah, like
cold
really.
and calm, you know.
Which is not, so it's like not his anger, it's the other side.
Yeah. That's
one thing that makes the whole situation worse is that the Northmen, which were, you know, the battle-hardened guys, they're like, hey, let's get this piece of shit Lanislaw up and, you know, fighting and taking out the scout party. And it was Colum West who told them, you know, he's like, no, we need him alive and he's useless in the fight. Let's just have him stay behind. So, you know, he totally besmirched West's honor.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the Northman, Black Dow saw it go down. And he's like, yeah, you got a pair of balls after all. He's basically high-fiving him after he saw him push him off a cliff.
Oh, but if Black Dow comes up to you, Dusty, and high-fives you, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Right?
Well, I'll say all of the Northmen in the group had contempt towards Lanislaw. They thought he was, well, in general, the Northmen thought the Northmen were pretty bad as far as like leadership goes and how they come to be in leadership positions. I think they did have respect for West and Burr, but they didn't really have respect for any of the other leaders.
No.
So they're like, how do these guys get into power? they're useless.
But don't you think Joe Abercrombie's making a point there?
Yeah,
he is making a point.
That's one of many strong points that he makes in the book, right? Like that's one of the things that makes it grimdark and that makes me love it, because I love fiction that's like ultimately just really cynical and pessimistic. Like, look, this isn't like about romantic heroes dying for the right thing. It's like, I want to get paid. I'll go kill someone. Are you gonna pay me? Okay, I'll go kill someone. Whatever. Can I drink?
We're talking about Costco, though.
Sounds good.
We'll get, but Costco, but in fact, if you look at many of the people in the Union Army leadership, they're all there for reputation, pay, like honor is more
social
like
status for sure.
Yeah, social status thing.
Yeah.
And like you can see that Burr is surrounded by people who have been appointed because of who they are, not their military skills. And that's why when Burr finds out that West has been on campaign, that West is successful, he makes sure that West is promoted. I mean, West's a colonel in this book, and he wasn't in the last. So West is actually promoted, and it's not because of his social standing, put it that way, because he's come from actually backwards social standing. But it's cool because remember when Glokta like befriended him, he was kind of seen like, what are you befriending him for? You're Sandan Glokta. This guy's like from common stock, West. And but West has been a war and has earned his colors. And I think it's interesting. Like we can see that maybe not in a war footing in our own lives, but we've all seen people who in either the world of work, for example, have earned their stripes as they've learned their way. And we've all seen people in some area of our lives who have managed to skip those steps and have got to a position of higher authority than their competency maybe deserves. And so even though we're in a war situation, we can sympathize with West and see his point of view.
Yeah,
Right.
well said, man. Totally.
And then West did get a taste of what it would be like to be the Grand Marshal for a little while. And it really just proved how competent he is at leadership.
But then he throws it away on a moral decision. Because you see, the thing is,
he did?
he did. Because if he turns up, if he is just a bit more corrupt, right? A bit more. It sounds weird. I'm saying if he was more corrupt, he would have killed less. I don't know if that makes sense. But what I'm saying is, if he like gives the prince like a little bit of a beating, not really, but like grabs hold of him and says, "Look, you can't do that. But when we get back home, I'll keep my mouth shut. You keep your mouth shut." And actually had got the prince back alive, the prince would have owed him everything. The prince would have become High King, and he could have made West's life easy street forever and ever and ever. But the point is that he would have been a terrible king. And I think that's one of the things that West realizes, that he's like, I'm trying to save you because you're going to be my king, but actually you would be an awful ruler, and you would ruin the Union, or you have the potential to, like you have ruined this army, and you don't even morally deserve to live, because you're on a leadership level, you're rubbish, but you're not just rubbish, you're actually horrible as well, because after all we've done, all you can do is try and rape this girl against her will. And it probably didn't help the prince that he fancied the girl either.
And
I think that's definitely a large factor.
Plays a role.
In that.
Then we see it again with the dogman later, right?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say we should talk about what happens with Dogman and Three Trees.
Okay, go for it. Lead us off, Andrew.
I'm like, I guess, like, what do you guys think about what happens with Three Trees at the end? I was a little confused at first, and I had to go back and read it more carefully.
Well, it was a huge. Well, they fight the Feared, and
Fenris the Feared. He's a fucking cool character.
So, from what I understand, is the Feared knocked him on the ground and just kind of pummeled him to death, to near death.
Okay.
Because from what I remember, when the Feared is punching him, and he's punching him like in the chest as well. Abercrombie describes crunching sounds.
Right.
So,
right.
And then he's bleeding from the mouth afterwards. So it's basically a bludgeoning death. He does survive to try to talk to Dogman, but he doesn't get all of his words out, and he does die before we hear what he was going to finally say to him.
Okay. I know. I
assumed though it was going to be to take control of the group or to be the leader, but who knows what it may have been.
Yeah, I forgot when I was rereading this one that it's when it's in the third book that the Bloody Nine fights Fenris the Feared. I thought that happened in this one for some reason.
No. He's on the other side of the world. He's on the other side of the world. But the thing...
Yeah, Fenris the Feared is basically when he... Okay, so that's when he finally defeats Bethod, because Fenris the Feared is Bethod's champion.
Yeah.
Right.
So at that point, he becomes king of the North, and then you have to remember too, there's like the fight in the high places, which comes in the third book, which precedes
but we're not there
Fenris the Feared fight. Yeah, that's
right.
The third book for sure.
Like, we need to kind of describe Fenris a little bit, because like he's not described like an ordinary man, is he?
Yeah, he seems like something, like some sort of fantasy creature, almost like the flatheads, or the what are they called?
Shaka.
Shaka, yeah.
The Shanker.
Shanka, yeah.
Shanka.
There's definitely an enemy.
Yeah, he's kind of described. Well, he's described as being at least a head taller than the Thunderhead.
And he was meant to be this giant of a man.
And the Thunderhead, I think, is like 7 feet tall. So He's super huge. I think he's basically hairless, like completely shaved down.
And he wears black armor, doesn't he?
Yeah, half his body's covered in armor, and the other half is painted blue with tattoos and whatnot. And what it seems like is the painted half of his body doesn't seem to feel pain from that half, nor does he get any significant wounds.
It's like it's like invulnerable, or it seems to be. It seems magic in this world is mysterious.
Yeah, he seems to be like physically invulnerable on that side of his body.
And there's Joe Abercrombie, obviously, like he has lots of cool, like he takes a cool thought and then he makes it his own. And like that's the idea, you know, of the time of, you know, if you go back into Anglo-Saxons and stuff, and people using woad paints on their bodies to represent protection and also to bring fear into their enemies. And of course, that's exactly what the Fearless is and does. But in this world, magic is real. And if you draw from the other side, you get some serious stuff going down. But when he fights Three Trees, there's a couple of points that I found really poignant. One, that Three Trees is actually a better leader than Logen, in my opinion. Like, he would have been a better leader of the crew. He's led the crew really, really well. He's an amazing man. He's honorable as to the honor of the North, which isn't the honor of, like, I'm the king. It's the honor of actions and your personal deeds and your personal name.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Three Trees is just such a likable character. And when he was defeated by Logen, he was man enough to stand against Logen. But when properly defeated by him, he was also man enough to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. And I think there's the crew is an interesting comment by Abercrombie. And I wouldn't be surprised if Abercrombie believes personally that if you are beaten, but in an honorable way and by a good person, you should not let the fact that they beat you stop you forging a relationship with them. It's not a common comment that we see in books, but the fact that he's made the band of brothers, the best friends we see in the series, people who were all beaten by Logen, is a really interesting meta commentary that I think is a really interesting insight into maybe some thoughts that he has pondered on himself as an author. And I think he puts it across really, really cool, that they're not weaklings. They're all powerful, strong men. But even though they can respect each other, and they forged a bond that is more than just the fealty that the Union guys have to their leader. Because they're like, we have to follow you, you're our king. He's like, it ain't that. It's that we know that you're strong enough and you deserve that leadership. And that's one of, I think Dusty mentioned it, that when they see how the Union leaders are like in position, they're like, what is this crap? You know, like in the North, none of you would be leaders because you'd have to earn it with blood and tears and your champions. And like, so it's that thing about power being the individual power of the person and the power of how many people can you command or affect. And in the Union, the power of money and influence, like the Bank of Valentin Volk, right, is power. Here in the North, that doesn't count for crap. In the North, it's just like, what can you do yourself personally? And when Three Trees died, I was gutted. I really was. But it's a commentary on age, right? That in the end, even the best of us get old. And that's very much, you know, Grimdark, he's all about that. He's not hiding from that. He's like, people get old and die. It sucks. Look at this. Age is not fun. And again, we can all relate to that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And that fight. Oh.
And I like that.
What I was going to say is one thing too. I was going to say about Three Trees is that it seems that even though that Logen was the leader of the band, everyone was there because of Three Trees. Because the reason we find this out is when Shivers joins, right?
Yeah.
So Shivers says, "Oh yeah, we heard Three Trees is out here, and he's an honorable man." And then we get to hear all about how Three Trees was the one that everybody talked about in opposition to Bethod. It wasn't Logan that people were rallying to. It was Three Trees. It just so happens that, Logan is the most badass of the group, so by
Well, he's the one who
default he
beat them all.
became leader.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
also he's the
he
one
became leader by default.
man
But
on man.
because Three Trees is such an honorable guy, people would flock. Well, if we're talking about specifically the names of the named
Yeah.
men in that group, those are like the cream of the crop when it comes to named men.
Amen. Amen.
Yep.
And so, without, minus Black Dow maybe, because nobody likes that guy.
But but his name brings fear, right? It may not bring honor, but his name means like you do not want to screw with this guy. So if Black Dow is with you, it's like saying you brought a bazooka, right? We don't respect the bazooka, but we fear the bazooka. We don't want to mess with the guy with the bazooka. You're not a good shot, but you don't need to be a good shot because you're freaking scary.
And then Logan would be the nuke in that comparison.
Exactly.
And also we could also see that the North is very much an honor culture.
Yes.
Like they're kind of like the Klingons, They're like, honor cultures from our society, like Native Americans and cultures that respect honor.
It's interesting though. There's a different kind of honor because the Union would also claim to be an honor culture. Like honor is a huge deal there, but it's the different kind of honor, right?
Yeah, well, it's a warrior culture specifically, right? That's why their society breeds and like births warriors like the Bloody Nine.
But it's also why the North couldn't combine because they were always at war with each other.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But since there's such like I was going to say, since there's a system of law in the North that is much more rigid, what I'm guessing is most of the disputes in the South, go through some type of legal system. Like
judiciary.
Glokta is definitely part of that legal system.
Yeah, definitely.
In the North, it's just like, you dishonored me, let's fight.
Yes.
In the South, it's like, I have a grievance with you. Let's take it up with the
judiciary.
The judiciary. Like I don't remember who the head of the judiciary was.
Yeah, there is. He's very important. It begins with them. High Justice Monrovia.
There you go, High Justice Monrovia. Yeah, I know that he would be kind of like the Supreme Court, and
exactly.
Salt would be like the
CIA.
I don't know, CIA, I guess.
If America was corrupt, if the secret police, right? So they work outside the justice system.
Well, it'd be like the FBI because they work internally.
And that's it. I like this too about how like Logan's crew are people who he has beaten in fights and shown that he's stronger than them. Like that sort of culture, like part of kind of warrior culture. Absolutely. It reminds me of what people say about like MMA fighters. Like they beat the fuck out of each other and then they often hug afterwards.
Yeah,
it's like this hurting each other as a way of bonding, especially. And then that's not exclusive to warrior culture either.
No, but they respect that, and like actually, we can even see this with some lawyers. I've seen that in high-powered lawyers that they will absolutely rip into each other in the courtroom, and then afterwards go out and get a drink together. And you're like, that was just work, right? and you're like, but you were awful. Like you absolutely ripped that guy a new one. He's like, yeah, and you were really mean about it. He's like, yeah, but that was work. We actually really get along. And you're like, you can't. They're like, yeah, we do. And you're like, what? We mutually respect each other. And he was defending a bad person, and I respect him for how well he did that. And you're like, no, that shouldn't be the way. But obviously there are people who can absolutely do that and have that detachment. Just again, I think that point is that with the Northmen, the honor is not about reputation necessarily. It's about individual action. It's not about what other people say about you. It's what you have done, your deeds, and your deeds add to your name. And I think one of the most interesting things about what Dusty said that's really made me think is, was it really Three Trees who held them together? And Three Trees' loyalty to Logen that actually helped hold it all together all those years. Because I think there's some real truth in what Dusty said. There's some real insight. And one of the things that's very interesting to me is what Grimm says. Because they actually show us a bit of Three Trees' funeral kind of thing in the North way. When he goes, what do they say? Back to the mud. And Grimm, Harding Grimm, if I'm right, I think that's his name, Harding Grimm. He is one of the crew, and he doesn't talk, like at all. And then, like at the funeral, he just suddenly comes out with like, I don't know, this is probably an exaggeration, but like 2 paragraphs of him just talking, and he just like lists off like the honor and the greatness of Three Trees. That there's basically no man in the North whose name is his. He like stood and did all that was right. And like, you can just imagine if you were stood in that group, like I imagine myself standing there just going, do you talk? Like, and it's just, that statement for me tells me more. And again, Abercrombie did it beautifully, because by having him not talk through all of book 1 and through most of book 2, and just having a word here and minimal, like a head nod, and then just suddenly this block of paragraph of writing, it was absolutely stunning to read. I was just like, oh my goodness, like Grimm thinks this guy is second unto God. And I'm like, and Grimm don't give no flowery words to nobody. And it just was so powerful. And I just think that's amazing. How did Abercrombie do that to me with a character who has so little page time, almost no actual speech? We don't know anything about his relationships. And yet he made me feel like Grimm knows what it's about, man. Dang it. Like, if he tells me to jump, I will jump. If he tells me this was a great man, he must have been. That's great character building. And I think I'm not clever enough to understand exactly how Abercrombie pulled that off, but I can tell you how I felt reading it. And it made me think, yeah, Three Trees is the linchpin. He's calm enough for Dow to like stop him, like basically just killing everybody. He has the loyalty and the friendship of the Dogman and Thunderhead. He has the respect of Grimm. Even Shivers has heard of him and wants to be one of the named men. And Logen clearly felt he had his back. Brilliant. Really, really great characterization.
Definitely, man. Well said. Well said. So you want to talk a little bit more about what happens with the Dogman?
Yeah, good call. Good call.
Yeah. So what are the what do you think is the most interesting what do you think are the most interesting aspects of what happens to Dogman in this one?
You mean that he becomes the chief?
Yeah.
Just his evolution as a character.
Yeah, like they do defer to him quite a bit, and I think whenever they were talking, at least conversing with the Union, the Dogman kind of played a key role. And it's funny too, because what you were saying about Grimm, it's like most of the characters don't understand Union, so the only 2 that can speak it, I believe, were Dogman and Three Trees. But in the end, we saw there was like this one point where Grimm said something to the Union in their own language, and they're like, huh? Grimm speaks Union? So he's just so a non-spoken character that they trip out over that. But I think that was one of the biggest things that promoted him to leader, his ability to communicate with the Union, because the other 2 or the others in the group didn't really have that. Three Trees is gone. How are they going to communicate with the Union? It's going to be Harding Grimm, I guess, or the
It's not going to be Grimm. Grimm does not want that position.
I think that's not one of the stated reasons, but I think that's kind of a reason, reason that makes sense to me. Another
I
thing
think
is because the two hardest names like left in the group, and we're talking about really hard names, are Dow and Thunderhead, and they do not get along, and they will not follow each other.
no.
So, and they had
Yeah.
discussions too about who would lead the group if something happens with Three Trees, and they came to a decision themselves that it would be the Dogman, because it was the decision between those two. We
Yeah,
decide that you're going to be our leader.
Agreed.
You know, so,
But I think there's a few things that we see, like with our POVs from the Dogman, you get to see that he's kind of been the number 2 for a while, or at least that's how it feels, and that he's almost like the face of the group, whereas Three Trees might have been the tactical head and even maybe the heart of the group. Dogman's been the face, it sounds like, for a bit. Like, he's the one who goes out before them. He's the one who speaks to people for them. He's the one who ranges in and out and figures out what's going on. And, like, Thunderhead is the strong arm and Dow is the backstab. You know, he's the knife. And Thunderhead is like the axe. And Grim is just the quiet legs that keep them going. No one notices him, but he's just there and carrying on. And so they all, like, play this role. And Dogman, I think, plays the role of the face, the scout, the forward thinker. And so when Trees is gone, I also think that Trees knew it would have to be him, because he's the only other one who's got that balance between the group, but also because of his role as the face. One of the things I think is really interesting is that West's reaction to seeing the girl he wants to be with attempting to be slept with by the heir apparent of the Empire, and then seeing the girl he wants to sleep with sleeping with the Dogman, right? And he is utterly gutted by both instances, but his reaction is entirely different. And I think obviously some of that's because the second one is consensual, but at first he doesn't know that. He's like, is this rape act 2? And then like, he doesn't realize who she's with. And then he's like, oh, it's that. And he adjusts. He's gutted, but he adjusts. And it means that he breaks away. But it's interesting that he doesn't try and kill the Dogman, does he? There's no, like, you know, we talked about like how he can go into a rage, how he is furious. And like if he was Black Dow in that moment, and she was the girl Black Dow wanted, and he saw the Dogman sleeping with her, he would just knife him. Yeah, he just like, you're currently naked and not looking, I'll knife you. And Joe Abercrombie is totally capable of writing that while they're having sex, West just comes up and smashes the back of his head in and says, by the way, you're mine. And that could have been a complete face heel turn. And West's anger could have made him a full villain at that point. But that isn't where he goes. Because in the end, bad decisions, anger and all, West is a good man.
Interesting.
Yeah, I don't think he's a bad person. Yeah. I think for the most part, he tries to do the right thing.
Even when he doesn't. It isn't like if he kills people, it would be as a manslaughterer, not as a murderer. But then, of course, he does murder one person, and only one person in all the book, and we believe in all his wars so far, and it's the prince. And that's why I think that's a really interesting juxtaposition of his rage, like biting that guy's face off, and then coming home and just going, drop. And you're like, ooh, that's like a different kind of West, and I'm not sure we'll see that again.
Yeah, that's true, man. He like basically went into berserk mode and realized, yeah, this shit's not good for me. Unlike the Bloody Nine, who's just like, yeah, that sometimes happens, and I don't really know what I do. Yeah, sometimes I don't notice if I get stabbed with a spear, and maybe I kill 10 more people.
One thing I do like about the whole situation with Cathal and Dogman and Wes is that they actually confront that instead of letting it linger. Because I know Dogman thought it was Black Dal messing about outside. I know Cathill eventually goes to Wes and says, "Oh, I know it was you," and she knows that Wes was interested in her. I'm pretty sure.
It's clear.
And she explains to Wes, "It's just you're too angry for me," and that's interesting. Consider like the rough Northmen, right? They're like
they're
they're
killers.
less angry. They're
Dogman's,
straight up killers, yeah,
yeah.
but they're like controlled killers.
Well,
You know,
Black Dow.
well, yeah, except for Black Dal maybe,
But she
but
didn't. But she isn't choosing Black Dow. To be fair to
right,
her,
right.
That's true.
he is
So
not.
yeah, I like how they address that,
Yeah.
and it makes West directly confront his flaw.
Mhm.
That he's an angry person, and we're given like so many clues. Like even the Northmen are calling him furious. It's pretty apparent by that time, and then he comes face to face with the reason. Because I know in his head he's like the dog man. How could she pick the dog man?
Over
You
me.
know?
Come on.
Yeah,
And
and then he finally gets the reason why. It's like, yeah, you're just too much of an angry person. You know?
And again,
And that makes sense, you know.
Yeah, it does. And we saw that in book 1, right? With when he hits his sister.
Right. You know, it's kind of like a foreshadowing. Like Cathill can sense that something's a little bit off about West here, you know. And if I got in a relationship with him, you know, I don't. He might be a little bit unpredictable in that way.
Yeah, and I absolutely believe that could be the case. Like West's a good guy, but we've seen that when we've seen a couple of times his emotions just get the better of him, and not always in war. Like him when he strikes his sister, and like the thing is, she's been a right little biatch, right? She's screwed up things, but the point is that he almost doesn't even want to do it. He just does it, and that makes you think, there's a tension and an energy there that is dangerous. And so, Gahill's thinking, I bet she's been in abusive relationships. In the war-torn situation, she's been practically raped. She probably was raped in her past as well, because of the way the North do things, which is pretty freaking brutal. And then you think, do I really want to be with a relationship with someone who, if I decide at some point to say no, may no longer feel like accepting that, or or like if we had an argument and I told him like to shut the hell up, that without thinking he might just strike me, and if he does, will he stop? Because
Well, there's also a commentary too, because they come from a family where the head of the family was abusive and possibly had similar anger issues.
Oh, you mean West's dad?
Yeah, West's dad.
Yeah, absolutely. So I thought you were talking about Cahill, but absolutely West.
Oh no, yeah, West's dad, definitely has an influence.
100%.
So that influence definitely is carried through to his character, and he battles with it. I'm guessing he's better at taming that part of his personality, because
better than his
it
dad.
Sounds like it sounds like the dad was a much worse person.
Agreed.
Than West was, just by what Artie has described and kind of when they talked about it a little bit. But because she was surprised when she was not surprised, but that she was hit. She was more disappointed in West rather than surprised about it, because up until that point, he hadn't struck her like that before.
No, I get the feeling that he'd become the protector. As he got old enough, he'd probably been her protector, but now she sees in him the same shadow of their father. But you see, again, that's something very realistic, isn't it? We hear that all the time. In my work, I do a lot of safeguarding work with older people, and one of the things that we find is that almost always, that people that end up being accused and found guilty of safeguarding offenses have been victims at some point in their own lives. And that doesn't excuse that behavior, but what it can do is help us understand it. And one of the things I love about Abercrombie is he doesn't tell us hardly any judgments. He doesn't say you must like this character or you must hate this character. What he does is he just lays them out, warts and all, and says you decide what you think of this. Because we have characters who say, and I don't know who says it, but one of them's like, honor is the most useless thing. You can't buy anything with it. You can't sleep with women with it. You know, it doesn't feed you. It doesn't keep you warm at night. It's like it's pointless.
I think that's a Glokta saying.
Yeah, it probably is.
Sounds that way.
I don't have the quote off the top of my head, but it absolutely, this person's opinion is honor is useless. But there's other people in the books who think honor is worth absolutely everything. And it's really interesting. And some of them think of honor in different ways. Like Three Trees is a man of honor, and so's West. And in a way, even so is Jezal. But they have very different ideas about what that means. And totally. I think it's great that Abercrombie doesn't say, and by the way, it's the dog man who's right. He says, this is how they all act. You decide what you think of that.
Yeah, I definitely prefer that most of the time too. The things like your moral judgment of what happens with the characters in terms of the underlying themes is left up to you, and you don't get like these moralized messages. Like that's another thing that
I know what you're gonna say. Moralized messages like the Broken Earth trilogy.
Oh yeah, that one's disappointing, man.
and various people will go because people have a stick.
It's funny.
But
what?
Sorry, Dusty.
Well, I know what it's kind of like the direct opposite of what Abercrombie does. Like instead of having you trying to figure out who is the good guy or the bad guy or who is morally correct, I know in the Broken Earth, the author goes out of your way to tell you who's wrong and right by by actually creating paragraphs and parentheses explaining, like in a fourth wall fashion. Yes, in a fourth wall fashion, why this character's decision is good or bad.
Okay. And the thing is, all ethereal styles have their place, and like. I'm someone who can really enjoy something like C.S. Lewis, where occasionally in some of his stuff there is a very direct, and this was a good decision, almost like the author telling you, and what they did here was bad.
Yeah,
Edmund lied, which he should have known better to do, right? And that's fine as long as you understand that's their take. But there are people who absolutely hate that for that reason. And like
that's one of have you read the Lightbringer series?
I have.
Yeah, that's one that like Dusty and I both just recently read that series, and that's one that like the ending of that series is.
Hang on, just to be clear, I'm in book 5. When I said I've read it, I'm in book 5.
Okay, I won't give any.
Okay, we can't talk about book 5.
Don't spoil the end of the Blinding White.
Okay,
you can just say it theoretically. You were surprised.
I'm not getting into anything specific, but the ending of the series is polarizing for that same reason. Like it's really direct messaging, and I actually liked it in that case. I thought it was executed really well.
I thought it was fine. I know some people hated it, but I thought it was like okay. I thought it was fine. Like I didn't have really any problems about the ending.
Yeah, me neither, really.
I'm surprised a little that it's going to be, because obviously most of those books are really tricky for the same reason the Abercrombie's books are. Like, who is the good guy here? Because I thought you were Daze and then you're actually him, and then you did this and then you did that, which is pretty bad.
I'll just say that he wraps everything up with little question. Like you'll know basically everything and every little bit of everything by the end of the series.
Yeah, and to be fair, he's wrapped up a lot of things already, hasn't he? Like he a lot of things that were utter mysteries in book 1 have been clarified.
In book 5, it's like You
He brings it
understand
to
almost everything about that world at that point.
which is cool for me. I'm up for that. I like answers. And sometimes when authors don't give them, I think that's nice and exciting. And sometimes when they don't give them, I think it's because they didn't have a satisfactory answer. And so,
Yeah, it's like it's a balance, right? And
yeah,
it depends on the
good call.
author's style. Like, I absolutely love some degree of ambiguity, like sudden twist endings at the end of movies, or especially like even if the bad guy wins, I'm like, I understand this is fiction, so that's like chilling and kind of awesome in like a way that I understand this is fiction. And but then it can get so ambiguous also that you don't even know what's going on. Like, I've seen a few movies like that, like they're trying to be all fancy and tricky, and then at the end I get the impression, what the fuck was the point of that? Like, there has to be a point too.
Agreed. And some movies are better. Like, you think they're being super clever here, and they're going like, if you don't like my movie, you're just not smart enough.
Yeah,
Like
exactly. Yeah.
And I'm a little bit bored of that. Like, I watched. I gave a couple of examples, and again, maybe there are smart enough people who enjoyed these movies. But I watched Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, and I'm like, this is just not a good movie for me. I just don't like it. I just think it's
I actually
clever,
didn't like
but
that
nah.
one either. I
Tenant.
thought I tried watching it a couple times, and I thought it was a good idea in theory, but I just didn't like the romance aspects of it.
Well, the thing is,
Being John Malkovich.
I haven't seen that one.
I have. I wish I could have that time back in my life.
It's a movie that doesn't make sense, basically.
But the point
Okay.
is that for all of these movies, the person behind it had clearly a cool plot idea, a concept. But like, there's some like Inception, which also has a really trippy idea, but I believe the story is well enough executed that I can suspend my disbelief,
Yeah.
accept the concept, and say, actually, that's clever. And the story is executed well enough, and the characters are executed well enough that I enjoy the film experience.
Yeah.
But like, when I watch something like Tenant, which has a really cool conceptual idea,
I like this one. I know like a lot of people hate this one.
The thing is, I don't hate it. But what I would say is, I had to enjoy it. I had to stop thinking about it because it doesn't work with its own rules. Like, it doesn't work. Even something as simple as people are supposed to be going backwards, and yet, so they walk backwards when they're doing the reversal. But when they go back in time to do it, they walk forwards.
Yeah,
so they wouldn't be walking backwards. You would see them walking forwards, backwards. And
some of the reason, like one of the reasons I like that movie is it's like so conceptually interesting. Like, it's like some classic sci-fi in a little bit.
Yeah,
like
100%.
That part where he's fighting himself from the future is fighting himself from the past in slow motion.
Yeah.
And then they have one team go forwards into the future, and one team go backwards in time.
And they do a time dimensional pincer movement.
Yeah,
it's a really clever concept.
And I understand why people thought that Christopher Nolan got like way too fancy with this one. But I also I liked the fact that I had to go to the movie, and then after I was like, I don't quite understand what I just watched. I have to watch this again.
The thing is, it gets better the less you think about it. Like, the less you try and make it make sense. If you just go, I don't care, I get it, let's just watch, you enjoy it more. The thing is, books like Abercrombie's, books like Sanderson's, books like the Lightbringer series, the more I think about them, the more I go into detail, the more I find and the more I enjoy them.
Yeah.
And that is, for me, like, I've realized that my taste, and it is a matter of taste, is to that kind of world building, that kind of interest, that kind of excitement. And that's why you'll always find me lining up for an Abercrombie book, but not necessarily for a Christopher Nolan movie.
Yeah.
But anyway, we should go to one of the other main sections.
Yeah. Do you want to go to? Do you want to talk about what happens with Glokta in the book?
Siege.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
So just to set the scene really simply, Gurkish Empire is huge, massive, and they're setting siege to this city. Glokta is promoted to superior Glokta and then given the job of being the senior in the superior in this city that is destined to be destroyed. He can't win. But he is, as the superior, he's going to be the imperial representative, and therefore he is responsible for saving the city. So it's like a poisoned chalice. The chalice looks beautiful, but it's got poison in it. And so it's a little bit like Salt setting him up here for a big fall. And when he gets there, there is already leadership there, but it's all poisonous, right? There's definitely traitors inside. There's an overwhelming army outside. There is no way they can win. Even your friends are actually against you, and even his practicals. And again, we saw in the last book he got betrayed by practicals, and in this time he knows that the practicals aren't his guys. That he's even before he meets them, he's like, these are sent to spy on me and maybe kill me. And so that's one of the things really interesting here is Glokta, who's not a nice guy, has been promoted to absolutely the worst possible position of definite failure. And how the heck is he going to get out of this alive?
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's a great story.
Because the last superior was murdered or at least vanished. So he's going into a hostile situation already, being set up as the next guy in line. So I know one of his main duties there was to find out what happened to the previous superior, as well as defend the city. So there's a lot going on.
Interesting. Yeah, for sure.
And one of the things that's really interesting about Glokta is like Glokta's totally understands the Inquisition, right? Like he doesn't have scales over his eyes. He isn't like believing in anything. Like he's not like doing it for the people or like for God. Like Glokta just is no. He's flat, he's hard. But one of the things that's really cool is that the Inquisition clearly just gets fake confessions like all the time. Either in written or verbal form. One of the things that Glokta shows in all 3 books, I believe,
morality. He shows some morality here in this book.
He actually does care about the truth, right? He does actually want the truth. He has an investigative side to him, like a cop side that's like, I want to know who actually is guilty. And I want to see them punished. Like, I'm okay with the fact that we often punish people who aren't guilty, but I'd really, and I totally understand that sometimes guilty people need their fingernails chopped off to encourage the truth, because otherwise, why would they'll just, like if Glokta was like, you're hiding behind a smarmy lawyer, I'll just chop his fingers off too. And then, he wouldn't be giving any of that rubbish. When you see a cop procedural and the guy's obviously guilty, but he's going to get away with it because he's rich, Glokta don't have to deal with none of that crap.
No, he doesn't care.
He doesn't have to care. He's got big practicals to sort this problem out. And there is a little bit of like policeman with no restraints. And that's interesting aspect to look at Glokta from that concept of what if the cops had absolutely no rules at all and could operate completely outside the law? How might that go? And
you'd torture a lot of people apparently.
Well, that's one of the things that Abercrombie's suggesting is that it can go there in search of the greater good.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, one thing we do find out is that Glokta is very good at what he does.
Oh yeah.
And he has no tolerance for people in his profession who do the job incorrectly. Because he just shows up and he's trying to follow the lead of the last murdered superior, and there's another inquisitor who was under him, and it's like, well, we got some people here, and they go. I think 2 of them are dead, and one of them is just like beaten half to death or something.
Yeah.
And Glokta's pissed that
this is how we do things.
Yeah, and he basically. Doesn't he torture that particular inquisitor later on? He ends up finding out that the inquisitor was extremely corrupt,
Yeah.
And we eventually find out that the superior was also extremely corrupt as well.
Yep.
Everyone's corrupt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
a
It's an
corrupt
Abercrombie
city.
book. There's
Yeah.
no good people. But
Yeah, the entire city was pretty bad. I know there were some people who weren't. Like, I know the military leader general there. He was,
Aki's trying to do the right thing, bless him.
yeah, he was trying to do the right thing, but everybody around him, the governor of the city was corrupt. The son was corrupt.
The
The
leader of the
Spicer
Spicers Guild, who's super
was
rich.
corrupt, and he had like the least. We saw a different side of Glokta here in concerning the woman Spicer.
Yeah, that was
By decree,
interesting.
he was supposed to kill her because she was a traitor,
At the end.
and he ended up letting her go.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and he lets her go after he finds out she's guilty. Like
Mhm.
Right.
the thing that's cool about Glokta is like he makes you root for him. Dang it. You're like, you're a bad person, Glokta, but I am desperate for you to win. I
Yeah.
want you to win all these
Well-
people over and save the city and stick it to Archlector Sult. And you're like, but you're like a torturer. Like, why do I
Yeah.
like you?
But that's why it's like he's such a great character, because in his internal monologue, like we talked about last time, he's always like complaining about how much fucking pain he's in all the time.
Yep.
And then he'll go and fucking like brutally torture someone. So you're like, oh, poor guy. Holy fuck, why'd you do that?
I always remember the scene with the meat cleaver where he's like he takes off just a tiny bit of the finger and he's going up the hand and like just a little bit of time, because if you only lose the end and you stop there, then hey, you're good. And you're like, crap, now his 3 fingers are getting cut through. At some point he's gonna hit that pinky, and you're like, oh my goodness, this guy just brutal. But he doesn't do it for kicks. It's quite clear that he isn't like getting off on this. He just knows what works, and
He just wants them to confess. That's all he wants.
But it's not nice. But when the lady confesses, it's really interesting because Glokta wins. He finds out who the traitors are by torture, by the way. He does use torture to get his way. He actually wins over the practical, who we were sure was going to betray him, and I think was paid to betray him and was intending to betray him, and then doesn't, which is a nice flip from the first book. And then,
well, it's because of Atari. We do
Atari.
find out that she has a stake in all this that really usually you wouldn't see with the other practicals, because she has a family she needs to go home to, and she doesn't want to get killed over all this nonsense. So she's very heavily staked into Glokta being successful in this endeavor. So she's just as screwed as Glokta is in some respect, because I know when he gets sent back to Adjoa, Vatari pleads and begs with him to take her with.
Yeah, so he's like her only defense now.
Yeah, and it's interesting because she beats him.
Yep.
And Glokta doesn't get vengeance. He's like, okay, come with me. Because he's like, this is useless. I go through all this kind of pain every day. You think I'm going to be intimidated by being put through this? And it's interesting because we see his internal dialogue all the time. And he's basically always ready to die. And he always accepts to be ready to die. Even though, Vatari is like, oh, you shouldn't go back because you'll probably be killed. He's like, well, why are you doing this?
Yeah.
It's like, well, if I get killed, then great. Put me out of this misery.
But,
and I know he describes some of the misery. What was it? Click, step, pain. And that's basically his entire existence. So and it's just funny, every time he's in somebody's superior's office, he's basically ready to die. I know his phrase is, oh yeah, turn up in the river. Yeah, I'm expecting to show up in the river. And he tells that to Vatari straight up. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
we'll go back, and then I'll be thrown in the river. I don't know what's going to happen to you, but
And
that's
don't
fine.
investigate it too closely when I do.
Yeah.
But one of the things that's interesting though is that, like, just going back to what Dusty brought up, that when is it Colin Elder? What's her name? Carlo. I don't know how you pronounce it. It's
Who?
Carlot. The woman, the head of the Spicers Guild, Carlo.
Oh, yeah, I forgot her name. I just know she's the head of the Spicers Guild, but I forgot
She's
what her name
Carlo
was.
Dan Elder, and but he when he gets her, he succeeds, right? He figures
Right.
out she's the spy. He figures out that the leader's son is the one who was going to let them in, and she thinks she's got him, because when he finds it out, she's like, haha, it's too late, Glokta. My mercenary has already let them in. And then he's like, haha, like, I flipped it on you. I got a huge bank loan and I bought your mercenaries. And she's like, and as soon as he says that, she, like, her face goes, because she's like, oh crap, my mercenaries can totally be bought. So if you did that, that's definitely happened. And
yeah, because I know the governor's son is the first one to freak out.
He is.
Because he put some pressure on them, and he's like, oh, he knows. And he tries to flee, and I think he gets like punched in the stomach by a practical or something like that.
Yeah, and Glokta says something like, punching a man in the stomach equalizes all men. Like, he does like a little Glokta speech that's like, you can be big, small, pretty, ugly, rich or poor, but if you get smacked in the stomach, you're just like, my goodness, all I want to do is breathe, and you are just a cripple and you can do jack squat. I remember that. Abercrombie's got a good way of writing. Just sometimes,
Definitely.
like, we all remember that monologue from Glokta in his head of going up the stairs, right? It just sticks out. And like, that's such a boring thing, but he makes us feel it. And that is just good writing. I mean, the guy deserves all the money he has, because he's a freaking good writer. But
definitely.
And so sometimes when he does that, it's like that. He just has, like, he's very quotable, is what I'm trying to say. Glokta in particular.
Yeah.
And
there's such great lines. He has such great lines.
Sorry,
that's really off topic here. I'm not a soccer watcher, but there's like some game playing in the background, and man, these people are ridiculous when it comes to like fouls.
Oh, don't spoil the football for me, because on Sunday I don't watch it. So I'm recording all the. If you're watching the European Championships, I'm going to watch those tomorrow.
I don't know what it is. It's just the teams are SUI versus Turkey.
Oh yeah.
I don't know.
So yeah, it's Switzerland versus Turkey. It's the European
There
Championship.
you go. I'm like, man, these guys are like super playing up like their injuries. It's so hilarious.
They should play American football, shouldn't they, and get a grip. They are ridiculous.
It's so funny.
One of the problems, though, in that sport is that the referees will not give fouls unless you fall over. You
can like punch someone in the face.
So you have to fall over.
It feels like it, yeah, because like if you do a foul in the box, penalties are given, which are basically almost automatic goals when in the professional game. And like in the Premier League, which is one of the top leagues in the world, I was watching a game. We watch all the games, and a really good player runs at the box. A guy whacks him, kicks out, totally fouls him, does not get the ball, but he stays on his feet because he's trying to be honest. Tries to play on, but he's clearly been heavily disadvantaged by getting booted, and he runs past the point where he can do anything and is shoved out, so the ball goes out of play. Nothing given.
So they have to play it up in order to get this.
Yeah,
the referee
if he goes over, it is a guaranteed penalty, because now we have video refereeing. So if he goes over, they would have had to look at it on the video, and they would have had to give a penalty. But because he did not fall on his face, they would not do it. And that to me is the referees encouraging play acting, encouraging cheating.
Okay.
And I hate it, but I think it is, the players are stupid, but the referees have partially made this happen by the way.
Yeah,
that
because
they've
I
got great
just
games.
watched something and it looked like the guy did like a front flip on purpose and landed on
Yeah.
his back. I'm like, Jesus Christ, what are you guys doing?
And like sometimes they're
You're gonna get more hurt by doing this front flip and landing on your back than what
correct.
actually happened to you.
And if you watch it carefully, they'll often grab their knee regardless of what happens, right? So you see he gets in the leg, and he falls over, and he's holding his leg. I'm like, he didn't touch your leg, dude. Your leg was not involved. Like, if you're going to play act, do a better job, right? If you're going to pretend to be hurt, at least do it realistically. But anyway, yeah, soccer, man. It's painful to those of us who love the beautiful game. It is painful to us. I literally have my leg. I won't show you because, this is PG rated, but I have like bruising all down my left leg because I played football. I mean, and all that happens is a guy who like weighs twice as much as me just comes up behind me. I'm going to head the ball. He's going to head the ball. It happens, right? But there's like you've got bruised muscles. But I'm a weakling, right? I mean, look at me. I really am a weakling. But I have no need to roll around on the floor. And you're like, these sportsmen are like in physical primacy. What the crap? Anyway, we need to carry on. But just one thing before we go off Glokta is what Dusty brought up. That after he completely reveals her perfidy, he has her dead to rights. She's tried to trick him. He's completely outplayed her. He's got all her military. She is penniless. She admits the truth. And the thing that she admits is she was out of money. And like Glokta, she knew that it was over for the town. The town's going to get taken. Okay. Even though Glokta's done this amazing job, the town's going to fall. Everyone knows it. And so what she had done is she had negotiated to betray the town in order to prevent it being absolutely sacked, as in rape, pillage, plunder, wreck it. Like, we'll do a peaceable takeover where we kill the minimum amount of people. And so the reason she was a traitor was not for greed or glory. The reason she was a traitor was she was going to save thousands and thousands of lives. And I think that is really interesting because, again, in most books, right, the traitor is just a traitor. And here, what Abercrombie's saying is a lot of people are traitors for, in their own heads, some very good reasons. Like the person,
I think that works well too, because like you said, there aren't any good guys in Joe Abercrombie novels. So like he's like we said, he's Glokta is a sympathetic character, but he also still is a torturer. So like it's not. I think it makes it work better. Like it's still a huge surprise, but I think it works better than it would have if like he were this noble good guy. It wouldn't have had the same effect because like it would have been less meaningful if you have like a more like quote unquote moral person. Yeah,
typical hero.
Yeah,
and like I don't really think Glokta is a hero, but he is definitely the protagonist. But what he does here is what Dusty says. It's interesting is he lets her go, and he pretends that she's dead because she is a traitor, and by the law she should die. And Glokta's like,
because everybody's head was put on pikes and displayed, including the ambassadors, which he tortured and killed.
But the thing is that one of the things about Glokta is that he's like, no, I feel sympathetic to what you've gone through, and he lets her go, but pretends that he didn't, pretends that he had her killed, which is even better than just letting her go, because by pretending he had her killed, Archlector Sult will stop trying to kill her. And again, I know we're not getting into book 3 now, but one of the things we find is like, Glokta, good on you, man. That was like really a good, nice move. She's an old woman. She isn't going to live forever. And then in a later book, she comes back and doesn't do the one thing he asked her to do, which is like, now I've saved you, go and disappear. And she does it.
But was she really old though? Because
she's
I know
Glokta
because Glokta basically described her like he was getting a boner when he was talking to her.
But one one of the things is, again, remember, when you're young, you think like, how could anyone fancy like a 45-year-old woman? Ew. Because like when you're 16, you're like, whatever. Then you're 40, like me, and I'm like, I find a lot of 45-year-old women plenty hot. Thanks. So your tastes change as you age, and you're like, yeah, I can see that a 20-year-old girl's really pretty, but I can actually really appreciate a middle-aged woman because heck, I'm a middle-aged man, but I don't feel old. And so Glokta is no young chicken. And one of the things, again, Joe Abercrombie, man, the guy's a freaking genius. There's one bit when she comes in and Glokta says something like this. I'm going to misquote it, but it like just shows how good his writing is, right? Because it sticks in my head. He's like, you could see she'd taken a lot of time in her preparation and not a moment had been wasted. So she obviously does herself up, takes significant time to do that, but Glokta recognizes that it's worked, that she has fought the trouble of time and is still a very nicely made up woman, even though she is in her middle to later years and still is preserved her beauty.
In short, she is a MILF.
Well, yeah, absolutely. She might even be the age where she could be theoretically a grandmilf, because at 50, you certainly can be a grandmother and still hot.
Yeah.
But the point is that he does release her, and then later on in another book, she throws it back in his face a little bit, and you think, right, well now Glokta's just going to have to like he did one good thing and it screwed him over. And I'm not going to go into that because we can do that in book 3. But the point is that Joe Abercrombie, anyone else, I feel, if you do a really nice thing, it works out for you. Okay. That you know, you let the bad guy go and then they turn up later and bring in reinforcements to save you in your hour of need. That's what happens. You know, you're nice to Vegeta and he becomes one of the bros and then supports you for the rest of the thing and becomes your best friend. You know, this is what happens. Or, you know, you have Zuko and he ends up like marrying one of the main cast. You know, oh, we got Zuko in. But this time, Glokta does something nice. And Joe Abercrombie's like, actually, sometimes you will do nice things for bad people and they will just sucker punch you for it.
Yep.
And that's just life, honey. Get used to it. And you're like, Joe Abercrombie, you're a cynic, but actually, that happens in life. Sometimes you do nice things for people and they're not going to pay you back with kindness. And I think that's, I love that. I know it sounds weird, but I love that because that's my philosophy, is that if I do something nice for you, it is not because I expect you to do something nice for me one day. If I do something good to you, it's because that's who I freaking am. And if you don't want to do anything nice to me ever, that does not matter. You do not owe me because I treated you like a decent human being. And I think there's too many people who go around and think, if I do something good, that should be paid back to me in some way. I should get some reward. Someone should say, well done, or thank you, or pat you on the back, or put you in the paper for donating to charity. But actually, what Joe Abercrombie says is sometimes you do good things and nothing good comes out of it. That's just life. So
you could ask too, like, if the reason you're doing nice things for people is because you expect some kind of reward for it, then are you actually being a genuinely nice person?
Yep. Where is your and that's why when Glokta releases her, it shows that he has some genuinely good parts to him.
Exactly.
Like even though releasing her is illegal, it is not to his benefit at all. At all. He's not going to benefit from it. She's poor. She can't even bribe him. And he does it anyway. And he's not even going to admit that he did it. No one will ever know. And as we find out later, she screws him over. He gives her life and she screws that over. But it's just, I love that by Abercrombie because he says, yeah, Glokta is a dirty little git, but actually we're all dirty little gits in some ways. But that doesn't mean we're irredeemable. It doesn't mean that we don't do some great stuff. It doesn't mean that sometimes we may be flawed human beings, but we can surprise you. And that is cool because I genuinely believe that. I don't think there is any person on this planet that is universally evil. And I think that you'll find that most people, you know, that even the ones that drive you nuts and you think, my goodness, you're corrupt, I bet his kid loves him. You know, I bet his mate who he goes to the pub with has a great time with him, and that's one of the things to realize. And I think Abercrombie, even though he's a cynic, I think he also is showing he's a realist, and so it's not all black, even in the grim dark reality.
Yeah, for sure.
I was gonna say, did you want to touch on Glokta's return and the impact of
at the very
West
end of the book
being declared? Well, he comes back home, and then news comes that West is dead.
Yeah.
So there's the thing with Artie, and she gets all of her stuff taken by debtors.
Yep.
And he does a good thing of setting her up so that she has somewhere to stay.
Yeah.
And I know there's kind of all of her stuff gets taken away. I know, but he was tasked with protecting her
by West.
Who he rekindled his friendship with. So he was going to maintain that honor by doing what he could for her.
And he did.
Yeah.
And she beat. Yeah, I know there was a point where once they got their stuff back, they had the debtor grovel before them, and she was just like beat him into oblivion, and Glokta's like, I think that's enough. Which is funny for someone like Glokta to say, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
But Glokta and Artie, we're going to get into a lot in book 3, aren't we? Because that's like where most of
that's for sure.
Progress happens. But one of the things again is it just shows that Glokta is, in a weird way, no, not in a weird way. In his own way, he is honorable. Just like in his own way, the Dogman is. Just like in his own way, Harding Grim was. In his own way, even Bethod is honorable in his own way. And like I love the way Abercrombie plays with that word honor and what it means.
Yeah, like what do you have honor for?
Does it mean you never tell a lie? Because often, like people who we think of in these fantasy books as honorable are like the paladins, so they don't lie and they don't do anything for themselves, and they're beyond reproach. But here, honor is like it when no one can see me doing the right thing, or is honor like honor of winning battles? Like Black Dow has an honor of a kind, but not honor that I would call honor. And I think
exactly.
That's really the idea of someone who has an honorable name in the Union is very different from who has an honorable name with the Northmen.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, he has a reputation to upkeep, you know.
I think we need to, before we leave the South, though, I just want to know, Dusty, what do you think of the freaking mercenary as a character?
Casca? Here's what I gotta tell you. You gotta read more into the series.
Oh,
he plays a very prominent role after these books.
In the standalones,
in like a little hatred and stuff like that.
That was one thing I was going to mention earlier, Dusty. That like rereading it this time since I read the standalones, when Shivers appeared, I thought, oh yeah, he's pretty interesting in the few of the standalones too.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of these side characters become propelled to protagonists in these other side stories. So
that's another sign of a good writer.
Oh man, Casca is a piece of work. I'll tell you that. I don't want to get too much into him, but there are 2 other books you probably haven't read that prominently feature him.
Okay, I'll read them. The key things he goes from being this fop and traitor, and he clearly is a fop and traitor who will go to work for
he's a master manipulator, and he knows his craft. That's what I'm gonna say. Like he knows how to.
That's one way to say it.
He knows his craft, and he is a murderous guy. Like I can't tell you too much because he's the head of a mercenary group for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we find is that in this book and the second and the third book, we see him go from someone who just looks like a foppish idiot to we actually notice he can seriously handle himself. His men follow him, and he uses them to be on the right side of victory almost every time.
Yeah, you
And
get to see more of his philosophy about that in the later books.
okay, cool.
'Cause it's yeah,
But you already
the
see
later
it
books
work.
really go into detail on this character.
Okay, cool.
I would highly recommend you read
Like a little hatred
Best Served Cold
and a little hatred.
and Red Country.
Okay, I'll
Yeah.
read them all at some point. It's just gotta
Yeah.
read lots of stuff. But
the Red Country has a secret cameo of one of the main characters from the original trilogy too.
but just talking even of just this book, so just talking of his character in this book, that I think he's a really clever. He's a really clever reveal
For sure, for sure.
You think he's
Yeah.
just
It's
gonna
just
be
like he's all about the money. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what side he's on. He wants to be on the winning side that pays him the most.
Yeah.
But he also wants to survive, and he does.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I think what he does understand is that because he's a mercenary, a piece on the chessboard, that whoever is going to win is likely going to be the one with the most money and resources, and they're going to pay him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like we see that in the book, she's using him to ensure the peaceful taking over the city. Glokta uses him to then preserve the city long enough for Glokta to get out and have a huge victory because it lasted way longer than it was expected instead of a massive defeat, also with him dead inside. And then later on, Glokta uses him to turn the tide again. And when the city is lost, Glokta pretty much outright says, yeah, he probably because he switched sides again. Like after I was gone, the Gurkish offered him some so he got paid like 4 times. And every single victory, Glokta's victory in holding them off was him. The Gurkish eventual victory is him. So he's getting rewarded by both sides multiple times. But just one last thing about the book is the Eater turns up. Yeah,
That's cool.
Oh yeah, that's a pretty important part.
Yeah.
I think we should touch on that, Dusty, as part of the world building, don't you?
Well, and also we haven't gotten to like one of the biggest and most important sections of the books, like the whole quest with Logen Ninefingers and Bayaz and Ferro and Jezal.
And then we'll go on their journey. So, what did you think when that happened? When like we finally saw an Eater, like for reals?
I thought it was so cool, man.
Yeah.
I just thought, oh yeah, like this is still a fantasy book. There are some pretty fucked up creatures in this.
I like that when you finally start to get into the lore of this world, the magic is mysterious, but it's not like just random. There's high art where you can draw on the other world, which is basically the demon plane, for power. But there's also other kinds of magic. So the second kind is the maker's magic, by which you can use the other side to make devices, like the divider, like the seed, like the house of the maker and the black box. And he touches on that very lightly, but it exists and it's clear. And then there's the spirit side where you can talk to those who aren't there. And he touches on that, doesn't he? Again, just lightly. Very, like we don't know exactly what that can and cannot do. And then the fourth one is the forbidden one, which is do not eat the flesh of man, right? And the point is that if you eat people in this world, you can use that to basically make yourself a bit more demonic. In other words, a bit magical. And one of the things that's really interesting about this fourth version of magic, the forbidden version, forbidden because the boss guy said so. Which is always interesting because, I get the feeling that Abercrombie doesn't necessarily buy into God says it's okay, so therefore it's good. God says it's bad, so it's bad.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. And also he isn't really God either. So interesting point. But regardless, I won't get into that. But the key thing, one of the things that's so cool for me about the Eaters is when they're talking, I think to Bayaz at one point, they say, we all get different powers, but one thing's the same. We have to keep eating.
Right.
And so that's like, oh my goodness, that just made me buy into it so big. I'm like, I was like, that just felt so real. That
like it's almost like they're zombies in that way, because they're
or vampires.
Or vampires, because they're like described as this like wild like cross between humans and animals.
Yeah, and unlike, especially the reason I use the vampire comparison is because they all get like powers, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're not like some random like grunt.
Well, they get powers, plus they are compelled to eat, like a vampire is compelled to drink.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like an addiction that they have to deal with.
Yeah. That's why I think, again, Abercrombie with his dang quotes, the guy just pulls me in every time. Just like that I just love that description. Like, we all our powers are different. Yeah, but your hunger is the same.
Mm-hmm.
And like Bayaz, as we find out in other books, like he understands all the different kinds of magic, but he doesn't participate in eating. And I think it's partially because he realizes that comes with binders, if you like, comes with the tricky other side. So he's like, other people can do that, and he'll use everybody, but he's not going to actually do it. Anyway, we should talk about the quest. But I just wanted to get that in.
One note.
Yeah,
cool.
for sure.
Yeah, just one note. So this eater is the third that we've seen so far.
Is it really?
Yeah, the first, there's actually two in book one that cross Ferro and Ulway's path, and Ulway kills both of them. He turns one of their bones to water, and I forget what he does to the other one.
I forgot. Oh, okay. You mean when they're trying to do the escape and he's trying to get her to Bayaz?
Yeah, they're traveling through Gurkle, and some eaters catch up with them, and she gets in a bind because they capture her and they're about to kill her, and then Yulway deals with both of them using high art.
I guess maybe that. Yeah, well, maybe just this one was more impactful on me because of the talking, but and of course Glokta survives it, which is freaking amazing.
We find out that eaters are super strong in the first book. We don't know the extent of their powers, but in the first book they get like shot and stabbed and nothing much happens to them. Mm-hmm. And then we see that happen when they're kind of experimenting in the second book with this eater that they capture.
Yeah.
To see what exactly they can do, and of course the eater's bored while they're trying to torture her. She's like, okay, this is like nothing. But
this is another cool.
But it seems that this particular eater though is not very strong.
Yeah.
Where we do see some other eaters that have like super strength and some other abilities. This one doesn't have that ability.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
actually, this eater is pretty damn strong because they had a tough time just like capturing her, but she wasn't strong enough to break her bonds.
Yeah,
that's true. Yeah, I like that. I like the eaters too because it's kind of another aspect of how the magic system is a little bit mysterious. Like you don't know really 100% what exactly they are. Like what they're doing, what they have to do and stuff, but there's more going on there, and it's pretty cool to just see Logen and Ferro kill a whole bunch of them when they get attacked by them too. Or not? No, that's not the eaters. That's the what are they called?
That's
again?
in the next book.
Yeah.
Oh, you're talking about the Shankar.
Shankar. Yeah.
So we're gonna skip into the quest.
Yeah, definitely. Because we're already
the old empire.
Yeah, it's cool. Like you get these little bits of learning more about the world building from Bayaz, and you get these awesome battle sequences with Logen and Ferro and Jezal. Pretty boy, spoiled prince gets injured, and he gets a scarred up face, and he like learns some of the harsh nature of life, and it's really important for him as a character. And and then of course Logan and Ferro have awkward sex, and there's a lot of really interesting stuff that happens in this part of the story.
They just don't hardly say
Yeah,
anything to each
and
other, do they?
Yeah,
and then there's the relationships too, like the building of the relationship between Logan and Jezal. Like we saw at the beginning of the book, or at least the series, that Jezal just saw Logan as this dolt, like from the north,
And
and
Logan
then
thought he was a weakling.
yeah, exactly. And then they start to respect each other, and he becomes a mentor to Jezal, specifically about combat.
Yeah, that's
And
interesting.
It's cool.
Jezal sees that Logan knows his business, and he starts to ask him about it. And I think one of their first combat encounters, Jezal just completely freezes up.
Yeah.
And Logan explains, like, half the people who encounter combat for the first time, that happens, and it's normal. And he tries to coach Jezal through, hey, what you're supposed to have fear. Like, even I have fear. If you don't have fear, something's wrong with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I like that too, how he becomes his mentor, and like, for example, that first time he almost gets killed, he says something like, "I'm going to be thankful for every breath I take from now on," and then Logan says something like, "That'll last a couple of days, then you'll go back to complaining about the shitty bread."
And we're all like that, right? We all have moments where
and that's interesting too, because like we just completely forget. Like, I think I had like a really sore tooth one day, and then I was like making all these oaths. If the pain would stop, I would do this, and that. And then I just went back to normal life like a day later. But that relationship I thought was really cool to see that blossoming, and then you kind of see this transition in Jezal to like extremely vain nobleman, because we do see that once his face gets ruined, he's genuinely distraught about that aspect of his injuries. Like that takes a huge toll. I know he's like huddles in the corner and cries about it, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
But he was hot, right? I mean, like, Jezal was.
Well, Logan tries to reassure him, though. It's like, oh yeah, you got some nice battle scars now, and some ladies really like that. Well, in the North, I'm pretty sure they would. I don't know how it works in noble society. I'm sure that can earn you a reputation, I guess, if you have like a scarred up face. Oh yeah, that guy knows his business there. But he's going through probably the descriptions of his pain throughout the section when he's down and out are like worse than Glokta. I was like, I don't like reading about what happened. He's like, I feel like this missing piece of my mouth, and it was just sounded so horrible, like the experience of him recovering from those particular injuries. And he was extremely concerned.
Yeah, like when he's trying to talk and he can't talk.
It was like,
yeah.
Well, that's what it sounds like in the audiobook, at least. But I don't know what it sounds like on paper.
I think it just, but I don't remember.
It's interesting too, because he did a really good job with those first two combatants he encountered, and then he just got blindsided by the third guy, because I think in that moment he got way too confident. He got way too confident, and it's like, oh yeah, I took those guys out in like 2 strokes, and then he gets hit in the back of the head with a mace or whatever happened to him.
Yeah,
And
man.
then what?
That's
Fly
another
saved
thing.
them by smashing a frying pan on the dude's head.
Yeah, and splattered blood all over him. Yeah. I
Yeah.
like how again I love the way that Joe Abercrombie writes violence because it's all haphazard and messy and nothing ever goes according to plan. I'm like I'm gonna just basically just swing this sword. Maybe it'll like hit him through the shoulder. Maybe it'll cut the front of his face off. Swords don't like always chop someone's head off or chop their arm off or stab them through the stomach. It's kind of like you're trying to kill them, but you're also trying to not die, so you can't really necessarily be that careful. Things kind of end up in a clusterfuck often.
Well, there is one because I have been noticing a pattern with some of his combat. One of the patterns I've noticed is there's a lot of splitting from shoulder to chest.
Yeah, there is.
Like someone get hacked in the shoulder, and then the sword will go halfway through their body to their chest.
Yeah.
I know that's like the most common like death stroke that you hear of in these books.
Mm-hmm.
But most of the time it's really, really messy, just like half of a dude, like half of the top of someone's head being chopped off, or
Yeah.
really messy stuff. People
Yeah.
gurgling, lots of gurgling and slow deaths. It's not like Hollywood, like you get stabbed in the chest, the guy's completely dead in like 1 second. It seems like these guys last like 6 or 7 seconds struggling and hanging on to life
Exactly.
before they finally go, which
Yeah.
is probably a much more realistic depiction of what would actually happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying it's not like, oh, you stab a guy through the chest and they're immediately dead.
No.
Or, it's more of like, oh, this is really grisly. And, just
now I'm
it's
all
not
covered
pretty.
in blood. Now I got blood in my eyes, and my sword is stuck in this dead body, and it's got a terrible smell, and it's making me want to throw up.
Yeah, and like people, trying to shove their guts back in and stuff like that. It's real grim stuff.
Definitely. Lord Grimdark.
But he also rarely does, when they get stabbed, they then have time for a 5-page goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. I love it. There's at least one part in particular where I remember where they like one of the enemies gets killed and he's dying, and it says his dialogue, I'm like, those are some famous last words right there.
It's the same like with Three Trees, right? When Three Trees dies, it motions Moby's trying to talk, but he can't get those out. Actually, that would be far more likely if you've just been pummeled literally to death.
Yeah.
Far more likely that you wouldn't be able to speak, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because, like, that's how you've been killed. The air has been smashed out of your body. And so it's disappointing because you're like, I want to hear what he has to say. But actually, isn't that how many people would feel? Sit around like a dying person. I want to be able to hear what you say, but actually, most of the time, you won't be able to hear what I say because I won't have time for goodbye speech because actually, that's unlikely.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What do we think of the the tips to magic in this version, like the black box, for example? And
I like how that's done in kind of like more of a realistic way, like we were just talking about, like it appeared, and then Jezal thought that's not the way it happens in the stories.
Yeah.
Where's all this fanfare and stuff, man?
It was just the rock.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I know.
But like, yeah.
But the magic is really interesting. I know there's a large discussion that they have in the middle of that trip about the conflict between Juvens and the Maker, right? Canadius.
Yeah, they tell the story. Bayaz tells his version of the story.
Yeah, and then we find out like some of the origins of the magic, specifically that these powerful mages of old, like Juvens and Canadius, were basically half demons,
Because
and
all
that
magic comes
they,
from there.
yeah, so they had better control over these specific aspects of magic because of how blooded they were. And I remember you telling me that you thought that Logan, that might be a demon thing, and I actually do think that might be true
I absolutely think
because,
that the Bloody Nine is a demon that's occupying Logan's body. I completely
well, I don't
agree.
know if it's a demon, but he might be demon blooded. And here's
Go on.
my rationale. When they have a discussion about all the powers that the old mages had, spirit talking was part of their arsenal. And since this magical ability is all based off of being able to access that, it might be, I don't know if it's true, that maybe since Logan has that natural ability, I don't know how it works with the apprentices and what they actually, we don't even know how the apprentices or Bayaz, how they actually come to their powers. At
Yeah,
least from in
they
the
just got
series.
trained by Juvens, and at some point they earn a staff. We know that's an important part of it.
Yeah, but it seems like the only people who could wield these powers has some type of connection
To
to
demonic.
the demon world. And it's shown that, hey, all of the great mages had some demon blood in them. And that's one of the reasons why they were able to command these powers. So I don't know if the reason why Logan can speak to spirits and why Ferro has her abilities, if that
Well,
has to
Ferro,
do with.
well, Ferro is
Well,
demon blood. We know.
Well, she's obviously demon blood because she has physical characteristics of being demon blooded, like
Yeah.
the eyes.
It's straight up stated in the book.
Yeah, the eyes. Her quick recovery from injuries. She can't feel pain. She can't see color. So she has like even outward characteristics of that. Maybe Logan has some aspect. Maybe it's very, very diluted, but he had the natural ability to talk to spirits. So I'm like thinking maybe he does have some connection with the demon world just because he has the ability to speak to spirits. And it seems that these magical abilities are tied in some respect of having some connection to that demon world. So, I think that the possibility of the Bloody Nine being a manifestation from the demon world, I think that is a very plausible explanation.
I absolutely think so, as you know.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I only came to this conclusion after I reread the second book. I was like, yeah, they're talking about spirit talking, and only like the mages of old had this ability, and it was due to their connection with the demon world. So,
But
like,
it's interesting that it's all like we see things from the different sides of magic, because there's the four sons, isn't there? And they have the high art, the making art, the spirit one, and then it should have been the flesh eating, but he gave him only a blessing because he's like, I don't want you doing no flesh eating. And then Juvens, unlike the others, Juvens got himself a stack of apprentices. He got himself 12 apprentices. And later on, obviously, that becomes really important because when Caius wants to punish Bayaz, Bayaz is like runs home to Juvens, and Juvens won't give him up. So then brother fights brother, and then when in Bayaz's version, when he sadly goes back to have to confront the second brother, all his buddies come with him. And like in the mural in the House of the Maker of like 11 of them facing him down, and that is obviously the other allies, the other apprentices. I think all of them come except Cahal. Is that the right way? The one who's now the leader. The one who's now the leader of the Gurkish Empire and has become an eater. And so it's like, from where we are now as readers, we think, oh, poor Bayaz, He tried to do everything right. One brother turned against the other, and almost by accident, all these people who should have been allies have had to turn on each other. And the discovery and the way that story is told to us, a little bit by Bayaz's apprentice, a little bit by Bayaz, and like you say, we don't really know what makes an apprentice or how they can do magic if they're not magic, and that's never fully explained in this trilogy, at least.
Yeah, because they're not the only ones who could do magic, because we know there are witches, right?
Yeah.
But
is what they
Bethod
do
has a
high
witch.
art? Is what they do high art? We don't know.
We don't know, but it seems that all magic comes from the demon world. So
yeah, and I think they right out said that the first law, which is like don't do anything with demons, is a contradiction in itself.
Interesting, yeah.
Because and this is called the First Law trilogy, as you know, and the whole point is that to touch magic, you must have something from the other side. But the first law that Juven's father Ayuz came up with is do not touch the other side directly, or like bring demons into the world. But actually, they were all demon born, right? They're all like demon blooded. The four sons themselves were demon blooded, and so it's. But you know what? I don't think Abercrombie has a problem with that. He's like, of course my magic is a contradiction. My entire world's a contradiction. Every single one of my characters is. Because, hey, that's actual life. Things aren't clear cut and neat. And like, I like, as you know, I'm someone who is like a religious person. And sometimes people are like, but some of your religion doesn't seem to make provable sense. And I'm like, nothing in the entire world is fully making provable sense. Even the stuff we can prove doesn't make fully provable sense, because you can challenge literally anything. All you have to do is go abstract enough and philosophical enough, and you can challenge the very concept of, is gravity a real thing, or is it something that we perceive? And like, it's, yeah. So I love the fact that Abercrombie does that. He just says, this is what you notice. What do you get from that? And you decide. And it makes it exciting, but it doesn't feel like just anything can happen. It does feel like there are constraints. We just don't know them all.
Yeah, totally, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well said. That ties back into like a lot of the mystery in the story too, and a lot of the cynicism too. But like we talked about, Joe Abercrombie executes it so well that you still have sympathy for these characters who are really bad people in a lot of different ways.
I think there was also, like, getting to talk about these characters more. There's a point during their journey where they're sitting around the campfire and they're asking everybody to divulge like some type of secret. We finally get Logen to come to terms with the Berserker mode called the Bloody Nine.
Yeah.
And he kind of explains to everybody all the, like, some instances in which he had, well, I think the first one is he killed his friend.
Yeah.
And that was the first time where he had blacked out, but he had no other excuse for his friend to be dead other than he killed him. So he had lied and said that he broke his neck falling out of a tree or something like that.
Yeah.
So he lets everyone know about this, and I know they get freaked out about it, but they seem to handle it pretty well. The reason I say this is especially when he does revert to the Bloody Nine in the book, Ferro actually handles that extremely well, and she knows what to do in that situation.
Yeah.
Because it seems like some of the Northmen in later books kind of know, but they don't know for certain. Like, that's not something he's actually disclosed to them.
They've seen it happen, though, haven't they?
They've seen it happen. Yeah, but they don't, like...
They've never discussed it.
No. Yeah, they never talked about it. He talks about that with them here. I thought that was really interesting to see that. And I can't remember the other secrets between the other characters. I know Bayaz was mostly about the lore surrounding um,
The
like
house.
the house of the maker and his
Mm-hmm.
and his relationship with that. I think Ferro. I don't remember what was Pharaoh's. It had. I think she was talking about like how she was enslaved.
Yeah, being a demon
And
person. Hello.
yeah, and how that felt, and why she hates the Gurkish so much. And yeah, it was. I really thought that was an interesting thing to see them all open up to each other and be transparent, which helped Ferro because she knew how to handle Logan when he. It's interesting too. The trigger for the Bloody Nine had to do with his past. So he got triggered by the Shankar simply because the Shankar are what murdered his family.
Yeah.
And he went into Bloody Nine mode as soon as he got into a large group of them. And this is when they got
And into
separated.
Berserker mode.
Yeah, they got separated by like an earthquake or something in this crumbling city. And it was full of Shankar. And he just went to work, and that's what it is for him. He's doing his work. And Ferro saw all of this,
Another
and
day
she
at the
just hung
office.
back.
Gotta go kill a bunch of demons.
She hung back, and it was funny because she took some out by bow, and Logan was visibly mad because he wasn't allowed to kill them himself. Like, since she was kill stealing, she deserved death. He's like, well, I'll take her out, after I'm done here with these Shankar.
Exactly.
But we also saw that, there's a physical limitation. She saw that he got tired out and he became approachable at that point because he exhausted himself, like killing this entire den of Shankar. And he started to come to sense and was like, oh, do I have to kill you or we're done here? And then that's when he started to revert back to his normal self as he passed out. So she got to see it up front. She knows how to deal with it because he spoke to everybody about that aspect of his life. Because if she didn't know, there's a possibility he could have pretty much killed her.
Or the other way, she could have tried to kill him, and she's one of the people who actually might have a freaking chance of killing him because of who she is.
Yeah, and then they develop a relationship.
I do.
That's a little thorny, but she's like, oh, I'm such a fool for falling for this pink. But she continues to foster that relationship, I guess, until the end of the book where everything goes sour. Because I know at the end of the book, she's actually hoping that Logan will follow her into Gurkle. But he's like, no, I need to get back to the north and handle some business.
Yeah,
definitely.
So it's like throughout this book, we see Ferro kind of get a little bit of a heart. This demon-blooded woman who's all about revenge. She is she's calling herself stupid for falling for him, but it's almost like, okay, she is a normal person, not normal person, but someone who's subject to human emotions and is relatable in that aspect,
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, I thought that whole story on that side, really the relationship building was Jezal, Ferro, and Logan, and the dynamic between the three, and having them become like a cohesive unit that relied on each other. And that especially at the part where they're doing their last stand against a dozen people, and it's just her, Ferro, and Jezal, and the odds look extremely slim that they're going to come out of this because they're holding I think they're on a hilltop holding a hilltop.
Yeah, they have
And
the high
they're
ground.
they have the high ground, but wow, a dozen people. That's no easy feat. And I think one of them was like a named man, if I can't remember.
Yeah, I think
But
you're right.
so I was like, okay, this is pretty dire. But I think all of that relationship building was kind of like a foreshadowing, showing that, hey, if they didn't do that, this hill siege
They wouldn't
would
have
not
fought
have.
together in the way that they did.
Yeah, they would have gotten destroyed if they didn't build some type of relationship with each other.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
And we know, Pharaoh's all about not trusting anybody at all.
Yeah, that's for
At
fucking
all.
sure. Yeah.
So throughout the second book, she starts to rely and trust on Logan quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
That she gets
And that's
turned more into a human rather than a demon.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
a lot of that's because of how, like, even in the end of the first book, right, when they're running around the port, like, trying not to die, like, Logan is the one who puts time and time and time again into her. And so it makes sense. And one of the things that's interesting is the Bloody Nine and Logan, they're hard people, right? And dangerous people. He's a dangerous person to know. He's a dangerous person to hang around with, never mind like. But the thing is that you can see that he wants to be a mentor. He wants to have love in his life. He doesn't just want to be the best killer in the world. That isn't like his goal. It's who he is, but it's not his goal. It's not all he stands for, believes in, or wants to be. And you can see that by the amount of time he gives to both Jezal and obviously to his relationship with Ferro. One of the person we've not mentioned as well is Kwai. Is that how you say it?
I think
Yeah,
so.
Malachus Kwai.
Who is oddly like different in this book to how he is portrayed at the beginning of book one. Like in beginning of book one, he's really talkative and outgoing as he goes to get Logan and get him into Bayaz's crew. In this book, he's like he acts almost as if he's ill. Very, very quiet, withdrawn, ill, I would say. So it's just interesting to see him like almost fully withdraw. And if you didn't know Abercrombie was so good, you'd think he just forgot what the character was. And like, oh, he's a background character, doesn't really matter. I'll just not have him do anything. But what we find out as the books progress is that this has to be for a purpose. And so that's one of the things that this book left me wondering is what is going on with Kwai? Because something's going on with him, but I'm not sure what. And I actually thought that like maybe he was having his life sucked out of him. In this book, I was thinking, is Ferro draining him? Like, is her demonicness like leaving him powerless? I was like, what's going on? And so obviously when there's more that's discussed in book 3, that was a really good payoff for me because I had that question at the end of this book: what's going on with Kwai? And it isn't answered. It's blatantly not answered in this book.
Yeah, he does definitely take a back seat, and it's interesting too because he's described by people as, oh, he's the storyteller. So that's that's the guy that has to talk a lot, but he doesn't do.
No.
He does tell some of the history.
Yeah.
But that's only when he's asked. Like he doesn't. He pretty much stays quiet unless someone talks to him. But yeah, we find out why that is in the next book. But one other thing I wanted to talk about is Bayaz lost control of the art.
Oh,
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I forgot about that, man.
I forgot about it too.
I did too, actually.
Yeah, I remember I didn't remember which book it happened in because I thought it was the first book. And I didn't exactly realize that what happened to him because he lost control.
Right.
because he uses the art against some assailants, and then he's not able to shut it off, and then he gets like this look in his face where he can't control it anymore. And I was like, because before I thought, oh yeah, he's using this power up, he's just weak because he uses magic, but in this case, he lost control of the power and it started doing things on its own, and he was completely out of control. I think by the end of it, we see like rocks flying around. Like the people that they were fighting were already dead, but his magic had just gone completely out of control and he could not control it anymore. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't quite catch that part the first time I read it. I thought
I
it
didn't
was
either. Yeah.
Yeah, because the second time I was like, oh, he lost control of the power. That's why he's like weakened. And I had a completely different, I guess I misread it the first time. I thought it was just like, oh, he used too much of it. But no, he lost complete control. And it affected him so much that he was, comatose for a few days?
Yeah.
Absolutely. See, I thought that was like I thought that's what happened after he did his blow a guy up at the end of book 1.
Did he get? I think he was just sweaty at that one.
So
he didn't get.
Yeah, that's where I got confused, I guess.
Yeah, he was just like kind of sweaty and out of breath. But this time, he completely. It's like he had a seizure and he just lost control of the powers. They were going on, and he couldn't do anything about it. And then we're like, oh yeah, Quai's like, he may recover, he may never recover. So we're like, oh dang, what are they going to do? Like, what's the quest mean if Bayaz is gone? And they start discussing what they need to do if Bayaz isn't awakened again. But yeah, and we, there's other lore where he talks to the when they go to that Western library, and you see that there's more contention about the story of what happened back in the day.
Yep.
Because he encounters some fellow mages along this quest. He encounters the Western library, the lady who keeps that library, and another wizard while they're walking through the old empire, who kind of warns them about some danger. But he talks to him and gives another side of the story that he hints at it, but doesn't really say that. Hey, what really happened on the top of the Maker's Tower? Did you really kill, or did you really throw him off the tower, or something like that? I know that's one of the first times that's asked. I know it gets asked again later on in another book. But
it's interesting that none of them seem to respect him like as much. Like I was, because he's like called the first of the Magi and all this. I always thought that if we ran into any of the others, they'd all like treat him super respectfully. Like I thought it was just like, the people in like the Union just don't understand. And then when to meet the people who do know who he is, who do understand what Hayat's all about, like I really thought it would be like a no-brainer that they'd all be like super supportive. And then I'm like, oh, I guess there's a reason that the 12 of them aren't together.
Well, we do see that they blame him for what happened. They
split with Juvens that led to their master's death eventually.
Yeah, like they know that it's his fault, and he does explain to, I think it was Yulwei who shows up. I'm not sure. It was one of the mages that shows up, and he explains to them, hey, I'm trying to make things right again.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like we do see that he takes responsibility for screwing up, and he's trying to actually fix it.
And in his
by destroying Gurkle.
Yeah.
And in his version of the story, there was like a reason for it. Yeah, like he does admit that things went wrong, even though he isn't explicit about exactly how it went wrong. He does admit things did go wrong, and he wants it to be sorted. Obviously, his version of events is contestable.
Well, yeah, now it's all about, okay, we have the Gurkish, and they're full of lawbreakers,
Yeah,
and we got to get rid of them.
Yeah, it's the eaters, right? That's the problem.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
they don't just have one or two. Like, isn't like one of their groups called like the 100 Voices or something? And they're literally all
Yeah.
eaters.
There's a bunch of them.
Yeah, so it's not like just one or two.
And then I'm thinking at this stage, is it really that he cares about the law, or is this really just a power struggle between him and Khalul?
Yeah. And that's a serious issue.
Yeah, it does end up being a serious issue. And then it's interesting because he does explain like the dangers of the seed, which early sounds like a radioactive material of some sort.
Yeah, their version.
Yes, their version of some type of radioactive material that, only demon-blooded people can be exposed without any harm. Yeah.
One thing that we find is that before, like, it was used before to like wipe out an army. It was like the impression, like because they're in the old empire, and he's like it took out everybody. But the point is that after that, they put it in the box because it was too dangerous. And then he's like,
well, yeah, he definitely demonstrates that. One of the cities is completely ruined, and Bayaz explains that's what ruined the city. And this actually gives Ferro some hope. It's like, well, if we can get this thing and use it on Gurkle, I'm all in.
Because it would allow me to destroy whole armies.
Mm-hmm.
And it certainly does do that. And yeah.
Yeah, man.
So, but one of the things is like the very fact of just this box that it can only be carried by like it's heavier than it should be, and the fact that when they get there, they go through all this pain, suffering, death. Jezal gets his face smashed in. They've almost died multiple times. And then when they do get to the secret place that he left, this secret thing that's super dangerous, they open it and it's not there.
Yeah, exactly.
This is an ordinary rock.
Yeah.
At first, when it just seems like an ordinary rock, you think it's just because I thought it was just because Jezal didn't understand, right? I'm like, this ordinary rock is the thing. And then Bayaz is like, no, this isn't the thing. We just wasted all our time. And you're just like, no.
We said Canadius had set up a trap or something.
Yeah, he just cheated. He just kept it.
A red herring. He set up a red herring, and this at least points. Well, they seem defeated, but they know that Canadius hid this thing somewhere.
So and where would he have hidden it? He only had one space.
No clue. Well, as people who have read the series, it makes sense where it would be based off of that. But at this point in time, the characters are completely dejected that they went through all of this for nothing. And then just to think about everybody's story.
Yeah.
This whole thing for nothing. Glokta gets sent to Dagoska to fail. Colonel West gets sent against the North, and they fail. Yeah.
And one of the things I like about it, though, is that they all do well, but fail anyway.
Yeah, they all do great. Exactly. They survive, but ultimately fail. I know Glokta's is probably
the most success,
the least, because he's told that he does a great job, but he's not. He doesn't feel good about it because that's not what he felt that his job was supposed to be. Because they were taking bets, right, on Glokta and how long he could last.
Yep.
And like, oh yeah, I bet that you could last more than 5 weeks, and I won the bet. And Glokta's like, really? This the only reason I was there this long is because of a bet.
Yeah.
And he was actually expected to fail. He just didn't know when the failure was going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So all this time, he's like, I better do this thing or my head's going to be on the chopping block when I get back. But instead, he's received in the exact opposite manner.
Mm-hmm.
It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly. Like, where's the fanfare?
Yeah. The Inquisition are so corrupt, but they have to be because the union that they represent is incredibly corrupt.
I like it. I like it that that line where it's another internal dialogue moment with Glokta, and he's saying something like like ladies will get wet for any tiny little victory, but no matter how many people you lost, no one will give a shit if you come home and you've lost.
Yeah. Yeah. Victory is, and it's also like it's about the power of appearance, correct? It's all about appearances. But
Yeah.
I think how did you feel do you remember how you felt when you finished this book and hadn't yet read book 3?
I was really sad about Three Trees when that happened.
Yeah.
I was like, damn it. Because I remember, after I read it, I was like, I sent Andrew a message. I just put 3 trees with a question mark. That was like my first reaction. And I was like, man, because I think that was the last thing that happened in the book was that battle.
That arc. Yeah.
And then the Dogman's POV was the last POV in that book where he became the leader. I was like, wow, that sucks. And then I was really surprised with Glokta's outcome.
Yeah.
Because he was totally setting up like Glokta is going to get the hangman's noose or his head chopped off or been thrown in the river. And the exact opposite happens. Like our expectations are subverted there.
Yeah, he keeps getting promoted.
Yeah, he keeps getting promoted, and then like he becomes dual superior with he has a dual superiorship in Adwa, which is of course it's a promotion of a superior over Dagoska, the city that's far away and failing.
Like the capital instead of like the death sentence.
Yeah, so he gets a major promotion, and then, well, I guess he kind of fails upward. I guess it's a good thing for him, but I think internally he feels that he's failed. He doesn't feel victorious at all.
Yeah.
And then we have the quest, which is a complete and utter failure.
It is.
They go through all this hardship for almost absolutely nothing, no gain at all. And it feels like they fought for nothing. At least in the war, they were fighting for a cause.
Yes.
And during Glokta's period, he was fighting to save a city. But on the quest, they were fighting to get revenge, I guess, at least revenge against the Gurkish. And then really, Logan really doesn't have that much of a stake in this particular quest.
No.
At all. And he kind of realizes that at the end where he's like, I have business back in the north. Like, what am I doing here?
Yeah. This is what I care about, actually. I'm here for Bayaz. Yeah. Why am I here for Bayaz? Like, what has Bayaz actually offered me?
Nothing. Yeah. At all. He's never offered him anything.
He kind of recruits him, doesn't he, in book 1, but he doesn't really offer him anything.
Yeah.
Well, I know in book 1 he's asked why is he doing this, and he basically gives an answer is like, well, right now I'm just going with the flow. Like I'm not really thinking. Like all the decisions I've made for myself in my life have turned to shit, so I'll just have other people make those decisions for me.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly
why he's working with Bayaz, so he doesn't have to think about decisions that he would make that would turn out poorly. And Jezal is looking for glory, right? He saw that he missed out on the war, and that he feels that it was a failure because he missed out on glory by going on this failing quest, where if he was in the war, he could have gained some type of status or reputation from participating. And of course, with Ferro, she doesn't get her revenge by nuking Gurkle.
Yeah,
Well, not
exactly.
She
yet.
wants, yeah, she wants to go back to Gurkle singing, and start causing havoc. Logan wants to go back to the north. Jezal probably wants to go home as well. Longfoot, I don't know what the hell he wants.
Yeah, he's just
He just likes to see the world. So I don't think this was really a negative. For Longfoot, it's probably had the only positive outcome because he got to see what he calls now the most beautiful city in the world.
and also,
And that's
almost no one's ever seen it, right? Like,
Yeah.
he's
yeah.
seen things that no explorer has ever seen.
So he's basically the only one who's actually benefited because the very reason he does that is to see things he hasn't seen.
Yeah.
So he is the only beneficiary of that quest.
And he definitely saw things that no one has ever seen. So,
Right. Right.
that definitely happened.
Yeah, that definitely happened. And he's like, oh, yeah, this is the most beautiful city I've ever seen. And he starts fawning over that city, and everyone's like, shut up, Longfoot. Like, everybody gets annoyed by Longfoot.
Yeah.
He's basically the most boastful person in their
Even though he has
group
the
of
least
people.
to boast of.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. Yeah.
But I think this book is really interesting for the fact that it is 3 big arcs, all with completely conclusive defeats, and yet at no point are you ever like interested in putting this book down. It is gripping. It is all the characters are evolving. They're moving forward as characters, even if they're not moving forward in their own plots. Brilliantly written, well executed, and just very different from your typical fantasy novel, which in itself is an asset.
Definitely. And yeah, it's so the beautifully written too. There are so many passages I mark down, like I often do when I'm reading a book, of just excellent writing that are so evocative of the senses of the character experiencing that environment, which are like the best way to show what is good, how the characters are feeling about what's going on, and like presents what's going on in the most interesting and exciting way.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. All right. So,
And Lannis Laws a dick.
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
One last thing really quickly though, is just I always think we should mention the titles because his titles are just amazing. Before They Are Hanged is a reference to a quote where the guy basically says that he's like, oh, I don't have big dreams. I just want a nice house, and out front maybe a couple of trees, and on those trees my enemies hanged. It's like, I would forgive them, but not before they're hanged.
Yeah, I love that line, right?
And that's the point of this book, is like, yes, by all means forgive your enemies, but not when they can get you back. And
yeah,
like
exactly.
the things we see here with West dealing with the prince, in the end he's like, yeah, I'll forgive the prince for what he's done after I've dropped him off a cliff.
Yeah, exactly.
And Glokta forgiving the woman and letting her go ends up coming back to bite him. And like, so it's all this idea of, yes, you can work with your enemies. Sometimes you have to work with your enemies, but if you're gonna be in Joe Abercrombie's world, you should probably just hang them first.
Mm-hmm.
It's an interesting thought. That's all I'm gonna say. I just think his titles, like his books, are genius writing. They are not typical of fantasy titles, and they can be taken in more ways than one, which is brilliant. And I just think I don't know what anyone really who's doing titles as good as Joe is.
Yeah, I agree, man, for sure.
Yeah, deserves a comment.
Yeah. So what are your guys's what are your favorite parts of the book? Do you still like the parts with Glokta the most in this one, Tristram?
Oh, I think Glokta is an individual character I find the most interesting as a POV character. I also find I love siege warfare, so I find that really useful as well. In a way, I think I find the quest the least interesting, because, yeah, like, but I love Jezal. I know we haven't really talked about Jezal. I know Jezal isn't meant to be like someone that you actually like, but I love Jezal, and I want things to work out for him so hard. And Abercrombie played with my heart there because he's like, oh, he's going to train him, and Jezal's going to become like, he's going to be really become a great warrior instead of just the show off. And I was like so wanting that to go brilliantly, and then of course he gets his face smashed in. I'm like, yeah, but maybe this will just make him a better person. So I had big hopes for that, and I liked seeing the mentorship. But I think the group I find the most compelling in this book is the Bloody Nines team. Three Trees, Thunderhead, Dow, the Dogman. They're just so well explored in this book, and they're just great characters. And things like killing off Three Trees was just so poignant, showing how the North is interacting with the Union is so interesting. And so I think for me it's that northern arc, but I hated how it ended. No, I didn't. It was a good literary decision how it ended, but I did not like it. I wanted Three Trees to live. I wanted West to get his girl. I wanted West's character to progress in a positive way instead of a negative way. I wanted so many things to happen that didn't happen, but I know that in the end that's for the best, right? Because Abercrombie's making me want more and
that's why you like it, right?
Yeah, they're the characters I feel the most connected to, and I had the most emotional reaction with in this time was the crew, because they're just so great. They're really, really well done, and they're really, really well balanced. They all feel like Northmen, but they don't feel like clones of each other. But they also don't just feel like tropes. Like Hard Grim isn't just the archer, and Thunderhead isn't just the barbarian, and Three Trees isn't just the tactician. They feel like genuine characters, and I think that's why I love that arc in this book the most.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I like I think I like the quest with Logen and Ferro and Bayaz and Jezal, and what happens with Jezal is one of my favorite parts. Like, he's one of my favorite characters in terms of what happens to him in this book. But you know what happens with Logen and Ferro too, and Bayaz, you know, explaining, doing more of the world building, and then of course all the stuff that happens with Glokta is great too. I think that the main quest is the part I like the most, just because of all the awesome battles. But there are awesome battles with Logan's crew for sure too. Like,
there are
Fenris the Feared, for example, fighting Three Trees is one of the best parts. Yeah. So what about you, Dusty?
Mine are pretty closely aligned with yours. I would say just the point. I have two favorite parts. I would say the fight with the Feared was one of my favorite parts.
Mm-hmm.
And my other favorite part was Glokta's checkmate on the traders.
Oh yeah.
Because he was so okay. If you're listening to the audiobook, he's like extremely calm, collected, and when he dropped everything on everybody with the mercenaries, I was like, "Ah, damn, Glokta has it all together here. He checkmated everybody."
Exactly.
And I was like, "All right, that was a good one, Abercrombie. I like intellectual checkmates like that." So I thought it was a pretty cool moment in the book that I really enjoyed.
Yeah, man, he's brilliant. He's the Glokta is kind of similar to Tyrion in Song of Ice and Fire in that way. Some ways, like, he's although I would say Tyrion is definitely a better person than Glokta is. He has more redeeming qualities
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's a caruser, but he's good. Has a good heart. As far as Tyrion goes. Yeah, he has physical issues, but those things aren't the same as Glokta's. You know, it's a quite different take on that.
Yeah.
And they're both witty characters. You know, they're both full of wit. Both Glokta and Tyrion. It's just Tyrion is probably more, I guess, morally good than Glokta is.
Yeah.
But they kind of have that soft. They both have soft spot for being morally good with women. It seems.
Yeah, that's true. Especially Tyrion. That's like one of his two weaknesses are wine and women, and he even one of his major problems is that throughout a couple of the books he falls in love with a prostitute who betrays him, right?
And
then he
the way his
he
wife
wouldn't
treats him.
defile Sansa.
Yeah. And that's like a really noble thing that he does there for sure.
Especially considering is that, just to be clear, that like from our perspective, it's defiling. But remember, from their perspective, they were married, so it wouldn't have been defiling at all. What he would have been doing would be completely not only legal but culturally normal. Like they called it their rights. Okay, like you couldn't rape your wife.
Yeah.
And so it's like for him to do that just shows that he's actually more evolved than most of the people in his own world.
Definitely. Yeah.
Because he wants consent, even in a marriage relationship.
Yeah, like even though he was getting so pressured by everyone to consummate the marriage, which he's supposed to do.
And if he did, it would have secured his position.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's the whole reason it got done, right? Is to put them into power over a very powerful asset. But he refuses to do it because he's actually just morally better than that. And
yeah, for sure.
Whereas we see Glokta do a little bit the opposite, but hey.
Yeah, exactly.
So what was your favorite part, Andrew?
Oh, I don't know if I'm not sure if I really have one favorite part. It's hard to say. I mean, I always like it. I always like Logen Ninefingers the most a little bit because he's just the ultimate badass. So I guess just like the battle sequences and like him being Jezal's mentor and him getting Ferro to
the last stand on the hill. I forgot to mention that too.
Mention what?
I forgot to mention my third favorite part was the last stand on the hill.
No, last stand on the hill is cool.
When Jezal got jacked up.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. All right, so I think we've talked about most of the most interesting and important parts there now. So yeah, obviously, next time we will talk about Last Argument of Kings, the third book in the trilogy. That would be awesome. I know we all think it's an excellent conclusion to the trilogy. So we'll talk about that in about a month or so, as usual, if that's cool with you guys.
Absolutely.
And I'll say all the cool. All right. Thanks for joining.
I have one question for you.
What's that?
I got one question. Are you going to go beyond the trilogy?
Tristram, I think that's for you.
I definitely will. It's just I need to fit this stuff in. That's because I'm reading a few different things and I need to fit in. I'm sure I want to read. I can't imagine that I can read anything Joe Abercrombie that would disappoint me. I think I would. Everything I read, I expect to really enjoy. I expect I will really enjoy Best Served Cold and A Little Hatred and Red Country. I think I'll enjoy it all. I just need to get to it.
Yeah.
Well, I understand you. Like, I haven't finished them all either. Like, I think I got 2 or 3 that I need to finish before I'm caught up.
Yeah, you and I have not read those same ones, I think, right? The newest 2 or 3 newest ones, I think.
But if it's gonna, is it gonna happen? It's gotta happen because it's
for sure.
Like the guy's a great writer. I'd rather read him than 4 or 5 other authors that are good authors. But like I would put his books first.
Definitely. So
speaking of good authors, are you up for some RJ in 2 weeks?
Oh yeah, absolutely, definitely.
Yes, it's
all right.
Next Path of Daggers episode, right?
I
Yeah.
just remember, like you see, I've already paid the price for that one, so I'm good to go.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll talk about that on your channel, Woke Centrist, the week after next week, the Saturday after next week, Dusty?
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. All right. Yeah, and also, and so next week, I was telling Tristram before we started too, next week on your channel, also check out the Woke Centrist channel. We're going to talk about season 1 of the Castlevania anime, so that'll be exciting too. And
Yeah, hey dude, like Tristram, if you want to talk about it, you're welcome to come on next week.
I already I have to get up in 4 hours, so probably I need to space this out in my life.
Okay.
No problem.
It's
No
the penalty.
problem, man. I
it's
totally
the penalty
understand.
Of living, the penalty of living in England
Yeah,
instead of in Canada or the US.
Yeah.
Anyway,
That's cool, man.
Sorry, over to you, Andrew. I know you want to do your wrap up.
Oh yeah, for sure. So yeah, like thanks for nerding out about this awesome book with me, as always, guys. And yeah, thanks to everyone for watching. Please subscribe, click the like button, click the bell to be notified when I'm coming out with new videos. Got a bunch more planned. And next week I'm probably going to continue my series that I'm doing on Jordan Peterson's newest book, Beyond Order. So look forward to that as well. And got more podcasts about awesome books and movies on the way. And thanks especially to those of you who give me money on Patreon, which I really appreciate. And I'll add the link for that in the description of this video as always. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all, and groove is in the heart. And Joe Abercrombie is Lord Grimdark. Read some of his books; they're awesome. All right, anything else to say before we end it there?
Nope, that's all good.
All right, cool.
Yeah, we're all good. This next week is Castlevania, and the week after that is some more Wheel of Time.
All right, yeah, check it out. All right, thanks again, everyone, and adios until next time.